Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing and beautiful day it is. An extra beautiful day today because we are going to be certifying President Trump. All plans pointing to go. And the tubes are connecting themselves. It's a beautiful day. Happy Monday, my friends, and happy January 6th. We are back here today, 4 years later, to do what we should have done back in 2020, which is to confirm President Trump for a second term. But we're now here. We're paying attention to what's happening out there all across America because the House is supposed to be gaveling into session right now, and we're going to be here covering it live. In fact, C-SPAN has fired it up.
Reveal to us your gracious and
like
eternal perspective.
in our prayer.
Give us the insight you would have us gain when we turn our eyes to you and away from the futile paths that vie for our attention and distract us from appreciating that your grace plan alone determines our life's work. Guide us in the way we should go and protect us from any adversarial attitudes that threaten us from within or without, the inimical intrusions that seek to undermine the divine work you desire us to do. Grant us your peace, and may your grace bless us with abundance so that in all things, at all times, we will realize that we have all that we need to succeed in every good work you have ordained us to complete. For your presence, your perspective, your protection, and your peace, we are forever grateful. Lord, in your perfect name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. The chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House the approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from Ohio.
Okay, don't let
Mr.
Kamala
Taylor.
do it. Don't let Kamala do it. Right there, my friends.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Up on your screen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Audio's out of sync?
The chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable, the Speaker, House of Representatives, sir, pursuant to the permission granted in Clause 2H of Rule 2 of the Rules of the U.S. House of
How's the audio?
Representatives, the clerk received the following message from the Secretary of the Senate on January the 6th, 2025 at 11:09 a.m. that the Senate agreed to Senate Resolution 2, Senate Resolution 5, Senate Resolution 10, Senate Resolution 13. Signed sincerely,
Thank you.
Kevin F. McCumber, Clerk.
Pursuant to Senate Concurrent Resolution 2, 119th Congress, and the order of the House of January 3, 2025, the chair announces the Speaker's appointment of 2 members as tellers on the part of the House to count the electoral votes. The gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Stile, and the gentleman from New York, Mr. Morrell. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the House stands in recess until approximately 12:55 p.m.
Okay. So we're gavelled
Welcome to
in.
C-SPAN's live coverage of the 2025 Electoral College vote count. Every 4 years, the House and Senate meet in a joint session where the electoral votes for president and vice president are officially tallied and recorded. In the November election, former President Donald Trump defeated Vice President Kamala Harris, receiving
You better believe he
312
did.
of the 270
Yeah.
electoral votes needed to win the White House. Vice President Harris, in her role as President of the Senate, will preside over today's joint session that confirms Donald Trump's historic re-election. Today's proceedings convene amidst a significant winter storm in Washington.
All right, so we're going to come back on this, my friends. We're going to pay close attention to what's happening today. Let me show you what's happening on the cables. And then we're going to go into some news because I've also got breaking news out of this morning. We had a filing from Trump's defense team, which has now just become public, that we're going to go through today. They are demanding a stay, an automatic stay of the sentencing. All right. So in other words, they're saying the judge doesn't have a choice. You have to stop the sentencing. Last week on Friday, as we were wrapping up, we saw that the judge rescheduled Trump's sentencing to occur on the 10th in just a few days. And now Trump's defense team, as we predicted, was out and about all weekend long, furiously typing and dropping this out, showing now what they've been working on. An affirmation of Trump's defense team, Todd Blanche, who's going into the DOJ, by the way, as the deputy AG. And then they submitted their memo explaining, look, Judge, you don't have a choice, okay? There's an automatic stay. This thing is stopped for now. Or they're saying if you don't think it's automatically stopped, then we're asking you for an immediate stay. So then the question is, as we speculated before, what happens now if it is stayed on the 20th when Trump comes into power? Then they definitely cannot sentence him at that point in time by even the judge's own admission. So then are they going to pause and hold the case in abeyance for 4 years and then come and sentence Trump at the end of the 4 years? And is that constitutional? Can he even do that? So we'll go into that. We've got some NOLA updates. We've got some Joe Biden updates. He's snapping at reporters. We've got a Zelensky update and giant news today. You can see this story just broke fresh out of the oven. Dictator Trudeau is going bye-bye. He has announced his resignation as the Canadian dictator, and we're happy to see him go. Good riddance to him. It has long been speculated, but he made it official today. People were saying it might come out later this week, but nope, fresh out of the oven today. Here is what Dictator Trudeau said.
My friends, as you all know, I'm a fighter. Every bone in my body has always told me to fight because I care deeply about Canadians. I care deeply about this country.
Pathetic.
And I will always be motivated by what is in the best interest of Canadians. And the fact is, despite best efforts to work through it, Parliament has been paralyzed for months after what has been the longest session of a minority parliament in Canadian history. That's why this morning I advised the Governor-General that we need a new session of Parliament. She has granted this request, and the House will now be prorogued until March 24th. Over the holidays, I've also had a chance to reflect and have had long talks with my family about our future. Throughout the course of my career, any success I have personally achieved has been because of their support and with their encouragement.
What?
So last night over dinner, I told my kids about the decision that I'm sharing with you today. I intend to resign
Deep breath.
as party leader, as Prime Minister.
Bye.
After the party selects its next leader
So
through a
dramatic.
robust, nationwide, competitive
Was he a theater
process.
kid? I don't know much about his history. Was he in
Last night, I
theater?
asked the president of the Liberal Party to begin that process. This country deserves a real choice in the next election.
Hopefully
and
they
it has
get
become
one.
Clear to
They can
me
be our 51st state
that
or
if I'm
not.
having to fight internal battles, I cannot be the best option in that election.
Was he a drama teacher? Are you serious on that? Okay, so he is very dramatic. You could hear that deep sigh. I talked to my children about this decision. About what? Violating the Freedom Convoy truckers' rights as not only Canadians, but as human people, as humans, individuals who deserve to be able to have free speech and the ability to protest against your mandates. The guy was one of the most condescending people in modern global politics. How he lasted so long is a mystery to yours truly, but good riddance to him. Constantly lecturing us about climate change. Canadians don't even have rights to guns anymore like they used to. I mean, I was reading through some of the gun changes over the last 4 or 5 years in Canada. It's crazy what this guy has done. So bye-bye to Trudeau. And what's happening here is very interesting. Trudeau is on his way out. And meanwhile, other world leaders are getting on board the Trump train relatively quickly. You can see, man, I don't think I've ever seen Trump smile this big before. but he is there with Giorgia Meloni from Italy. And he's thrilled, man. Here's this story. You can see Trump praises fantastic woman, Giorgia Meloni. So we've got dictator Trudeau is gone, and Meloni's out here. She looks pretty happy too. They're having a great time down there at Mar-a-Lago. She flew over to Florida to meet with Trump on Saturday, right before his election gets certified, as the key European leader is going to boost ties. Members of Mar-a-Lago welcomed her with applause and introduction. Her trip comes days before she's going to meet with Dementia Joe. No details of their meeting have been disclosed. Meloni had planned to talk to Trump about the war in Ukraine. We've got a clip of Zelensky now, who was on with Lex Friedman, saying, yeah, people are very curious as to what Trump can do to solve this war. They're going to talk trade issues, Middle East stuff. Meloni's office declined to comment on the reports, but there she was. There's Trump. We're going to get rid of dictator Trudeau. I don't know if we can make you the 52nd state, Giorgia Meloni. I don't know. We'll talk about it. We got to work on Canada first. She's like, okay, yeah, Mr. President, I understand. We're a little further away. We'll talk about it. She's potentially a strong partner for Trump. According to reports, Trump told the crowd, this is very exciting. I'm here with a fantastic woman, the Prime Minister of Italy. She's really taken Europe by storm, says Trump. Look how happy he looks. He's happy. He's going to be certified here very soon. So Trump and Meloni, they sat down for a screening of the documentary that was being shared there by our friend Viva, who was there introducing the panel and introducing the president. Shout out to our friend Viva Fry right next door on Rumble and YouTube. One of the biggest challenges facing Meloni was the arrest of an Italian journalist and another Iranian businessman who was there. So it was a fun time there at Mar-a-Lago. It looks like they had a great fun. And here was some video of them walking in there. Here's Trump and Giorgia Meloni.
Mr. President.
Hi, everybody.
We love you.
We're going to be down there. What is it, 8:45? When does the movie start?
It's supposed to be 7:40.
Whatever, we'll be down.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President. Thank you.
So Trudeau's gone. Georgia is in. And you know who else is having some feelings of Trump solutions in the air? It is, of course, Zelensky. He was over on with the Lex Friedman podcast, and now he's saying, everybody's calling to ask how things are going with Trump. Every time I have a text message with Trump, everybody's calling me. What'd he say? What'd he say? What's he going to do? What's his plan? Here's Zelensky on with Lex Friedman. Now, this is originally recorded, I believe, in Russian. And so what they've done is dubbed over this. So this is a translation from Lex.
Because Europe will be looking at us and will be looking at Trump. And by the way, I now see that when I talk about something with Donald Trump, whether we meet in person or we just have a call, all the European leaders always ask, how was it? This shows the influence of Donald Trump. And this has never happened before. With an American president, I tell you, from my experience, this also gives you confidence, that he can stop this war. It won't be long.
It is something that is showing that he has the gravitas to stop this war. So some interesting things are happening. He's not even the president yet. We haven't even certified anything. He was there in Mar-a-Lago over the weekend. And our friend Viva, look at Viva. Look right here, right there on the left. There he is. What's up, Viva? So he's there along with John Eastman, Michael Flynn's in the room, Rudy Giuliani's at the table, Alan Dershowitz is at the table. Look at that panel. And guess who showed up in the middle of this conversation? None other than the president himself. And our friend Viva's there. He posted this. He says, not too often you get the honor of introducing the president of the United States of America. So make sure you're following Viva at the Viva Fry on X and, of course, on Rumble right next door and on YouTube. here is what this panel looked like, because what's happening is Trump is still facing lawfare. J6ers are still facing lawfare. People like Matthew Graves and others are still arresting people. I still follow the FBI, or we arrested somebody for their violence on January 6th. You're like, it's January 5th, 4 years later, you weird freaks. But they won't let it go. And now Trump is having to appeal his lawfare sentencing. And we're going to go to that in the next segment. But here is what this current batch of lawfare was, with Eastman speaking and Viva there introducing the panel.
And then they gave me the warrant after the fact, and it said, you know, we're taking all of your electronics listed on the attached affidavit. Now, I knew that phone was unlikely to be on the attached affidavit, which to this day they still haven't shown me, because I just bought the phone.
Now wait who shows up on this one.
It was not the phone I had on January 6th. Didn't matter. And then they could seize all of the data on the phone, but they couldn't look at it, the warrant said, until they get a second warrant that meets the particularity requirements of the Fourth Amendment. And 2 months later, I start getting documents from my phone from a taint team in Portland, Oregon, asking if these particular documents
they are
were
very
privileged.
tainted.
And I said, I don't understand how you even have these documents. I read that warrant, and you weren't allowed to look at the content without a subsequent warrant, identifying with particularity the things to be searched and seized.
They just search whatever.
The Fourth Amendment.
Professor, if I may interrupt you, I think you might have your client here who could testify as to whether or not it was solicitor-client privilege. I was looking in the back and I thought I saw someone I recognized.
Who is it?
I think I do recognize him. That's President
It's
Trump.
the president! Get out of here! Crazy, right? So there's Viva in the middle of a panel. Trump comes walking out back there. Music starts playing. Proud to be an American. There's the president. Coming out. Everybody is standing at attention because the president walks into the room. Tons of photographs. What's up? There's Trump. Raises the fist in the air. Viva's just hanging out. He's like, what the heck? He's Mr. President. We're in the middle of a panel here. Excuse me, sir. We're busy. Just kidding. Viva's, of course, a highly trained professional. But incredible what an experience this is. So Trump's there. He shows up and says hello. And then we'll fast forward a little bit. And it goes back right. There's Rudy. There's Eastman. There's Flynn. There's Navarro's out there on the scene. And Dershowitz remains seated. Dershowitz. I'm not standing up for this. All right. So the crowd's cheering a bit.
To enjoy it as well. So everybody, please take your seats. We're going to finish our panel, and thank you.
Okay, nothing like having the president as your audience, and Viva's like just getting right back into it. So pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a hard act to follow, President.
So, Professor, the question was because you were representing your clients, and there was no respect whatsoever for the basic privilege of solicitor-client.
All right, so Viva gets right back into it, man. Very cool. So shout out to Viva. What an awesome experience. Way to host a panel in front of the president. And shout out to those gentlemen on stage who are there, who've been the victims of this lawfare that is seemingly never ending. In fact, it's still going on today because they want Trump sentenced before his inauguration so that they can call him a convicted felon. But Trump's team and others are defending against that, as we'll talk about shortly. But we added this other clip. Nancy Pelosi was very upset that they have a lawfare documentary that's being discussed and that the lawfare victims are now coming into power. Trump specifically taken over, baby. Pelosi can't stand it.
Trump was screening a documentary about the 2020 election, claiming his win and trying to talk about the legal challenges he had. There seems to be a continued effort to claim that he won in 2020.
It's really sad. It really is sad. And I don't know about the film that he had and the rest, but it's almost sick that he would be thinking that in 2020. He's won the election now. Mm-hmm. That will be clear. Yeah. That will be clear. And tomorrow he will be clearly
certified.
We will be accepting the results of the Electoral College. So he should be triumphant about that. But to be still trying to fight a fight that he knows he lost is really
He doesn't
sad.
know he
Was
lost.
screening a documentary about the 2020 election.
Yeah, and how rigged it
claiming,
was.
His
Look at her smile.
And trying to talk about the legal challenges he had. There seems to be a continued effort to claim that he won in 2020.
It's really sad.
It was
really is
stolen.
sad. And
It was a sad state of affairs. You guys stole it. You guys stole it from the CIA. You stole it in law by changing the rules during the counting of the votes, by extending deadlines, by making everything mail-in ballot. You had social media companies that were interfacing with the FBI and other entities to censor everybody. It was lunacy. So it was sick. And fortunately, the course of history has been corrected, and President Trump will be coming in and getting certified today. All right, so that is an update there. Now, let me just share with you what's happening over on the cables before we keep going, because we've got a little bit of time left on the clock. You can see it is snowed out all over on the East Coast. We haven't still gotten any snow here in Arizona where I'm at, but what we got is snow all over the place. And we've got, according to CNN, 38 minutes until we gavel back in and we start the counting of the electoral votes officially in the House. But I want to spend a quick bit talking about some news that just broke today, which is that Trump is now going to be appealing his sentencing order. And so let's take a look at that story right here from the president. President Trump is furious that he's now been ordered to appear for sentencing in Judge Mercan's courtroom. This is the false business records case with the porn star Stormy Daniels testifying and the convicted perjurer Michael Cohen testifying. The whole case was rigged by Alvin Bragg and his fake prosecutors from Biden's DOJ. But now that Trump is the president, he's made the argument, you cannot sentence me. I'm transitioning into the White House. You cannot penalize me. And Judge Mercan came back out and said, yes, I can. You will be sentenced, but I'm not going to really penalize you. I just want to label you a convicted felon. I'm not going to give you probation. I'm not going to give you a fine. I'm not going to impose incarceration. You're just going to be a convicted felon, which is still harm, right? You still lose your right to vote, can't possess a firearm. You have the pejorative label of a felon. And it's a big problem. So Trump is very unhappy about it, and his team is now appealing this. In fact, they're actually saying that it's not exactly an appeal. It's saying that you cannot continue moving forward on this, okay? It's a stay of criminal proceedings while they pursue an appeal or higher court. So let's go through these items, because they're telling the court that there's not much you can do about this. You cannot sentence President Trump, in other words. And we'll see explicitly what Trump's defense is writing here. But here is what Trump posted after the order came down, and he's very unhappy about it, as he should be. He says, listen, all right, everybody, I never falsified business records. It is a fake, made-up charge by a corrupt judge who is just doing the work of the Biden-Harrison Justice Department, an attack on their political opponent, me. He created a case where there was none. He keeps a gag order on me so that I can't talk about how crooked he is or how corrupt his daughter is. The fake news knows all about it, but they refuse to report it. He may be one of the most conflicted judges in New York State history. The accountant testified with total corroborations that the records were perfectly and totally above board. A legal expense was called on the books, a legal expense. There was nothing else it could have been called. This was the so-called falsifying of records. I was hiding nothing. Everything was out in the open for all to see. Every legal scholar of note said there is no case against me. The judge should be disbarred. This is why people and companies are fleeing New York, a corrupt court system. In another crooked New York case, another corrupt judge overturned 5 times on my case alone, the most overturned judge in New York, talking about Areola Engeron, valued Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida at $18 million, when it was worth 50 to 100 times that amount. And then we have also in New York, the woman I never met, celebrity photo lines from 30 years ago, those don't count as meeting, who was awarded almost $100 million, talking about E. Jean Carroll, the woman who paints her trees blue and names her animals after genitals. A totally out of control Trump-hating judge presided over this case. The Biden-Harris DOJ was involved via Matthew Colangelo, who came from Biden's DOJ, directly or indirectly in each of these cases. I won against deranged Jack Smith, who even was so pathetic he dismissed both of his cases. Says there has never been a president who was so evilly and illegally treated as I. Corrupt Democrat judges and prosecutors have gone against the political opponent of a president, me, at levels of injustice never seen before. Corrupt judges or judges so blinded by their hatred of me and my political ideology to make America great again are making a mockery of the United States judicial system, and the world is watching in disgust. Deranged Jack Smith, the evil and sinister prosecutor appointed by crooked Joe Biden to, quote, take me down, was found to be illegally appointed by a corrupt DOJ and FBI. And all of his many charges against me were dropped or dismissed. His illegal raid of my home, Mar-a-Lago, and Melania's closet will go down as one of the dirtiest tricks ever perpetrated by one candidate, as dumb as a rock, Sleepy Joe Biden on another. With all of this said, I still have confidence that the appellate courts will bring justice to America. And that's where Trump is taking this. Every legal scholar has been on his side, saying Alvin Bragg never wanted to bring this lawless case against me. He was furious at the way it was handled, and especially angry at Mark Pomerantz for his behavior and what he did. And remember, Pomerantz was that prosecutor who's a hack, in my opinion, who wrote that book and resigned in a whiny hissy fit with his co-prosecutor called Kerry Dunn when Alvin Bragg got elected. We can't prosecute because your case is crap. They threw a hissy fit and ran away. Then Biden sent Colangelo to go work with Bragg, and then the prosecution came back up. Surprise, Trump says. Ultimately, the Biden-Harris DOJ forced Bragg to concoct anything to embarrass Trump. But it was even more so what the corrupt and totally conflicted partisan political hack judge did and is doing on this sham trial. I even have still an unconstitutional gag order where I am not allowed to speak about the judge's highly disqualifying conflicts of interest, his daughter. Virtually every legal scholar and pundit says there is no zero case against me. The judge fabricated the facts and the law, no different than the other New York judicial and prosecutorial witch hunts. That's why businesses are fleeing New York, taking with them millions of jobs and billions of dollars in taxes. The legal system is broken, and businesses can't take a chance in getting caught up in this quicksand. It's all rigged, in this case, against a political opponent, me. And Trump is now saying that people are coming back to Congress to vote. And today, of course, is a big day because it's January 6th. So we're going to now see what Trump's team has submitted specifically. 2 filings from President Trump contesting Judge Mercan's order of a sentencing happening on July 10th, saying Trump can zoom in if he wants to, but the judge promises he'll be sentenced, ordered to appear. So Trump's defense has 2 filings that have just dropped. One is an affirmation from Todd Blanche. Todd Blanche has been appointed by President Trump to go into the DOJ as the Deputy Attorney General under Pam Bondi. This is important because Todd Blanche has been defending Trump for years. And now he's going to be in a position of power to right these wrongs. So he writes an affirmation, and simultaneously we have a more thorough explanation of Trump's argument here in the memo, saying that Judge Mercan, you don't have a choice. We filed this paperwork, and now there is an automatic stay of these proceedings, okay? You cannot sentence us on the 10th. And there are consequences to that, because the alternative that was proposed by Mercan and Bragg was to say, okay, we'll just sentence you after 4 years. We'll come back as soon as you leave office, and we'll just sentence you then. The question then becomes, is that constitutional? And so 2 things are happening here, 2 filings. Let's take a look at the affirmation from Todd Blanche. This is the incoming Deputy AG, Todd Blanche, now currently representing and defending President Trump. He says, look, Judge Mercan, here's the deal. I'm a partner at this law firm. I represent President Trump, and I'm submitting a notice to you that there is an automatic stay of proceedings, all right? Meaning you don't have a choice on this. But if you disagree and you think you do have a choice, well, then we're asking you for a stay. Now, this affirmation is submitted upon my knowledge and information and belief, and the source of which is my communications with prosecutors and with other lawyers, review of the case, review of the evidence, and review of this investigation. And so here is what we are submitting in our memo, signed all accordingly by Todd Blanche on behalf of President Trump. Here's the full argument. All right, Your Honor, listen up. President Trump hereby provides notice to you, Judge Mercan, and to Alvin Bragg that he will initiate appellate proceedings on January 6th, today, to challenge both this court's December 16th ruling that is wrongly denying President Trump's immunity motion, which we read here, where Trump said, I have immunity because the Supreme Court said so, and certain activities that I do are constitutionally protected from criminal charges, like talking to my White House comms director called Hope Hicks. I'm allowed to do that. They still brought that in as evidence and presented it in trial as evidence against Trump. Not allowed to do that. Trump said, you can't prosecute me with evidence of which I am immune, for which I am immune. They did that anyways. And then they said, well, it's not really irrelevant. You didn't really have immunity for those things. And so you lose. So they say, we're appealing that. They're also appealing the January 3rd ruling, which is also wrongly denying Trump's second motion to dismiss, which is based on sitting president immunity and transition immunity, right? If Trump is penalized right now, you're penalizing the incoming president. He's got a job to do, becoming the president. It started now. As discussed herein, Trump's defense says, we're going to appeal this, all right? And that should dismiss this entire politically motivated prosecution that's been flawed from the very beginning, that has been centered around wrongful allegations and false claims from a disgraced, disbarred, serial liar called Michael Cohen, who violated President Trump's due process rights and had no merit at all. We're also seeking interlocutory review, meaning the case is not over and finalized yet. Part of Judge Mercan's justification for sentencing Trump is he's saying, well, once we sentence him, then the case will be closed. Then he'll be convicted, and then he can appeal all of this, because the ordinary rule in criminal proceedings is you can't appeal anything until you're done. Otherwise, everybody would be appealing everything. Judge denied my objection, appeal. And the trials would never get done. So they say you can appeal at the very end. Once there's finality, then the court will review the entire record at the next level court. Here they're saying, no, we're not waiting until he's sentenced. Immunity means you don't have to go through the process and then get vindicated at the end. Otherwise, what good is immunity? Immunity means you're immune. Not that you have to suffer through the pain and then we decide whether the pain sticks or not. So they're saying, we're already appealing this and you cannot sentence us. Why? Well, due to the fact that further criminal proceedings are automatically stayed by operation of federal constitutional law, which is more supreme than you, buddy, and the court will lack authority to proceed to sentencing. And if you have no authority, then you must immediately vacate the sentencing hearing that's scheduled for January 10th and suspend all proceedings in this case until the conclusion of Trump's appeal on presidential immunity. Because the Supreme Court said there's clearly presidential immunity. 3 buckets of it, or 3 categories of immunity. One of those categories is no immunity. The other category is presumptive immunity. And then the other is absolute immunity. The president is elected to do constitutionally mandated things. If you're doing those things, you can't be prosecuted for that. Mercan is saying, I'm prosecuting you for that. Trump says, you can't. There's Supreme Court precedent. We're now going to appeal this. You're going to lose. In the alternative, if you think that there is no automatic stay, even though there is, the court should grant an immediate stay of all pending proceedings at your discretion, because you know we're going to be appealing all of this and you should vacate the sentencing scheduled for January 10th. Trump's defense rights. Before the Supreme Court decided the Supreme Court case of Trump, the only court to consider whether the filing of an appeal on presidential immunity mandates a stay. So if we appeal, is it automatically stayed? The only other court that talked about this was the District of Columbia. And guess what happened there? They held that Trump's appeal, when Trump appealed his last case on presidential immunity grounds, it automatically stays any further proceedings. That was in the Chutkan case. Remember, she stopped everything when Trump appealed based on immunity. It was the right decision. She was right. Merchan was wrong. He did the opposite. That holding was correct. And even Alvin Bragg said that. And the U.S. Supreme Court affirms that. You have to stay this. And so recognizing presidential immunity, the Supreme Court said the essence of immunity is that if you have it, if you have immunity, you don't have to answer for your conduct in court. That's what immunity is. It's not like, well, you kind of have like, you have immunity, but you still have to come in here and be harassed by Alvin Bragg. And then at the end of it, we'll say, well, those charges can't stick, but you still have to be harassed for years on end. No. Because the president is immune from prosecution, a district court's denial of immunity, if you say he doesn't have it, it's appealable before a trial. Now, the trial already happened here, but it's appealable before the pending case moves forward. Saying the Supreme Court repeatedly emphasized their separation of powers, and it mandates an interlocutory appeal, that it must be available, meaning in the middle of the case, you can appeal it because they're saying you don't have immunity. You're saying I'm immune from this process. Now, accordingly, questions about this must be reviewed. The Constitution does not tolerate impediments to the effective functioning of government, and presidential immunity is a pretty important concept. The Supreme Court's repeated citation of this case is particularly telling. It tells us there should be an automatic stay of trial proceedings while we're on appeal for immunity. And here, at minimum, 3 features of the Supreme Court opinion mandate an automatic stay, meaning there is no sentencing that's going to be happening. It's automatic, Judge. You have no discretion to even decide. All confirming Trump's appellate rights right now. Here's what they are. Now, as noted above, Trump said that the essence of presidential immunity is I don't have to go to court. Forcing a president to continue to defend a criminal case through sentencing and judgments would make him answer in court. That is a flawed interpretation of what's happening here. So if you deny a stay of this, you are going to be violating what the Supreme Court explicitly said is the point of immunity. It is of no moment here, says Trump's defense, that the court has suggested an intention to impose a sentence of an unconditional discharge, which is no penalties at all. Now, while it's indisputable that the fabricated charges in this meritless case from Bragg should never have been brought, and at this point could not possibly justify a sentence even more onerous than that, no sentence is appropriate at all. There are numerous legal errors here, including legal errors that go to Trump's immunity that we're going to address in the Court of Appeals. This court's non-binding preview of its current thinking, like thanks for telling us you're not going to put him in jail, but it doesn't mitigate these constitutional violations. The Trump court repeatedly rejected this, holding that mere allegations of unlawfulness cannot deprive a president of immunity. The Supreme Court reasoned that if it were otherwise, right, if you could just say, well, you did something bad, therefore you don't have immunity, everybody would just say you did something bad, therefore you don't have immunity. So likewise, Trump's defense says, regarding the government's demand to admit evidence of official acts, they brought in the evidence of Trump's official acts. The government tried to criminalize his official conduct. Now, given that presidential immunity entails immunity from the burdens of criminal litigation, especially sentencing 10 days before he's going to become the president again, the automatic stay would prevent that very injury, which is what the court has confirmed it's for. No penalties from the process. That's what immunity is. Now, continuing, Trump's D says, second, as the U.S. Supreme Court emphasized, the doctrine of presidential immunity nullifies the power of trial courts to act. Congress cannot act on and courts cannot examine the president's actions when they are his conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority. This is so important. This is the separation of powers that we talk about. If the courts can step in and say, sorry, you shouldn't have done that as president, and they're commenting on a president's exclusive duty and their role, that's the court becoming the president. That's separation of powers. They cannot do that. And that's what they're asking the court to do. So this conclusion is even more forceful when it comes to Trump's claim of immunity. All parties agree it becomes comprehensive and absolute. As soon as he takes office, immunity comes back. Sitting president immunity extends to the brief transition period during which he's preparing to assume the office. This is why Jack Smith dismissed his two cases, his J6 case and his appeal, during the transition period. Their politically motivated charges brought in Florida and D.C., there was no basis there for them to continue to prosecute him. He's now becoming the president. So they've got to dismiss. They did dismiss, and now Merchan is trying to avoid that fate. And third, Judge, the U.S. Supreme Court, they told us that presidential immunity should be resolved in a methodical, orderly fashion, not racing this in for sentencing 10 days before his inauguration. Despite all of that, they're doing the difference here. Allowing a criminal case to proceed to sentencing while a federal appeal is pending and another appeal is pending would constitute highly expedited treatment at its worst. This court's current schedule, which is denying Trump's immunity motion on January 3rd, and then as we pointed this out, scheduling a sentencing hearing just 7 days later, immediately before Trump's inauguration, is one of the most spiteful orders of all time, my words. It's highly expedited, as they reference. Trump doesn't have time to appeal. For example, the rush timing forecloses Alvin Bragg from even making a sentencing submission because the law says his sentencing recommendation has to be served no less than 10 days before sentencing. That's amazing. That's great work. Okay, Judge, you're violating the rules. Before you have sentencing, generally everybody prepares a sentencing report or a pre-sentence memo, PSR, pre-sentence report, or however you call it in your state. You prepare them. The government will prepare theirs. Trump's a criminal. He should be in prison for 2 million years, says Alvin Bragg and Matthew Colangelo. So 2 million years. Everybody comes out on the defense side. Probation only, no penalty, no fines, no jail, absolute minimum. You have an independent so-called probation department or an entity with the court that will do their evaluation. The judge gets these 3 reports, reads them, and then makes their sentence, and comes to a determination based on what everybody put in there. Now, Bragg, supposed to give the defense theirs so they got 10 days to review it, but they can't because it got scheduled 7 days later. So he doesn't have enough time to disclose it. It cannot be ignored that this rushed 7-day period between the ruling and the sentencing has been imposed in a case that goes all the way back to 2018, includes an enormous record. So there's no legal basis to try to rush to get this done, other than the fact that it's your preference to get this done before Trump's inauguration so that Bragg and the judge can tell voters that he completed his case. They have to close the case because once he's president, they can't sentence him anymore, even according to their own rules. And they need to say he's a convicted felon because that's all they live for now. Now, likewise, in such appeals, whether the litigation may go forward in the district court is what they must decide. And so common practice is to enter a stay. When you're appealing it, stop the underlying proceedings, which is what they're saying should happen now. The automatic stay of this is required by the Trump Supreme Court case, by the Coinbase case, which was like a 2023 case. It just broke. And it said that Trump relied on Coinbase to get the immunity decision at the Supreme Court. And they're all stacking up now. So presidential immunity based on official acts, he's raising an appeal on that, and he's raising absolute sitting president immunity. Both those things are going up. And so now it is appropriate to pause and appeal. There was widespread admission of evidence of immune official acts. Judge Merchan allowed a bunch of it in. Immunity from the evidentiary misuse of official acts is not allowed. Bragg used official acts evidence to probe his motives, and the judge allowed it. But the courts have already said that would cripple the proper administration of the presidential branch. The president's immune conduct would then be subject to examination by a jury. The jury doesn't get to decide what a president is allowed or not allowed to do when the president is explicitly allowed to do it. They're not elected president. The president is. Because evidentiary use immunity implicates constitutional concerns, There has to be an automatic stay. And second, Trump's claim of sitting president immunity implicates all the same things. All parties agree, even brag, that once Trump becomes the president, he will be absolutely immune from any criminal state or federal crimes under the doctrine of sitting president immunity. But this court's decision to schedule a sentencing on the 10th, the apex of the presidential transition, 10 days before Trump takes office, necessitates that Trump will be forced to continue to defend this case as he's transitioning in. Moreover, Bragg could also appeal the sentencing determination if they don't like it. Then, under the current schedule, instead of facing no further criminal proceedings, Trump could be forced to deal with criminal proceedings for years, which is the exact opposite of what the sitting president immunity doctrine requires. And it's opposite of what the American people want. We just elected this guy. Forcing Trump to prosecute or even defend another criminal term could remand this case for another criminal trial, even during his term. Now, moreover, Trump's defense says the prospect of imposing a sentencing on Trump just before he assumes office raises another restriction on liberty. He's got travel restrictions, reporting requirements, registration, probation, all other things. You cannot hit him with that under sitting president immunity. These are constitutional errors. They would cause major problems, and they cannot be allowed. Now, because the right of interlocutory appeal in the middle of this case and an automatic stay of which you have no discretion, it follows that the same rights stop the trial court from forcing Trump to undergo a sentence while the appeal is pending. So president's immunity from suit extends to immunity of sentencing, and Trump must be afforded the opportunity to litigate his appeal before you drag him in here and sentence him. Undergoing a criminal sentencing is the most extreme example of having to answer for conduct in court. That's exactly what presidential immunity and an automatic stay forbids. Now, to be clear, the filing of Trump's appeal on immunity, they're telling Judge Merchan, just to be clear, you have no choice, Judge, okay? It automatically stays this case. You have no decision, you have no discretion to make here. The sentencing date on January 10th is now gone. Do you understand us, is what they're saying. Stays further criminal proceedings in this court, including the imminent sentencing hearing scheduled for the 10th, because we're appealing this, and it does so as a matter of federal constitutional law. Don't care if you like it or not. As the Supreme Court decision makes clear, this automatic stay is an essential part of presidential immunity. It comes from the Constitution. As a matter of constitutional law, presidential immunity binds New York courts and you, Merchan, under the Supremacy Clause. And when judicial authority is invoked on behalf of the United States, you have to buckle and bend. There is no conflict between the Supreme Court's automatic stay doctrine and your case law here. Trump is entitled to a stay under New York law too. Under New York law, the court may stay further proceedings, and they routinely stay these things all the time, citing a bunch of New York cases. Such stays of criminal proceedings include cases granting a stay to stop the trial court from conducting a sentencing. They can also include stays at the prosecution's request, not just the defense. Another part of the law says you can also stay all further proceedings under Article 78, and that's what should happen here. In fact, it would be astonishing if such a stay, which is routinely granted in garden variety criminal cases, if this routine stay were denied to a president of the United States, asserting claims of presidential immunity from prosecution that raises multiple and momentous questions about the powers of the president and the limits of his authority under the Constitution. And so Trump's defense writes in conclusion, listen, Judge, by virtue of President Trump's filing of appellate proceedings raising his claims of immunity, all proceedings in this court are automatically stayed by operation of federal constitutional law. In the alternative, even if such a stay were discretionary, and it's not, the court should grant a stay. So you have no choice. But if you think you do, we ask that you grant it for us. The court should vacate the sentencing hearing scheduled for the 10th, suspend all further deadlines until Trump's immunity appeals are fully and finally resolved, which should result in a dismissal of this case, which should have never been brought in the first place. Further, President Trump respectfully requests his courts notify the parties by 2 p.m. today whether this court intends to proceed with sentencing on the 10th, which should not occur, notwithstanding Trump's interlocutory appeal to allow sufficient time for Trump to seek emergency appellate review. And so incoming Deputy AG and Assistant Deputy AG Emil Bove, Todd Blanche and Emil Bove, they're now giving Judge Merchan an order. We want you to respond by Monday, January 6th at 2 p.m. on our desk. Now, and we'll see what Judge Merchan does. But they're right, actually. And I think even you can see evidence of this in Judge Chutkan's pathetic acceptance of admission that this is true when she stayed everything in the January 6th case at the federal level. And even when Jack Smith was filing motions to continue discovery and all sorts of stuff, no. Trump's, nope, you're done. Stop filing anything. And they said, well, it's like a placeholder. And nope, don't care. Even Judge Chutkan had to come back out and scold Jack Smith and say, yeah, you got to stop filing these things because you don't have the power to do it. Trump is making the same argument. Judge Merchan has a little bit of a distinguishing factor here in that this is a state case, not a federal case. But I think when you bring in the full weight of the supremacy clause and all of the transition rules, what is happening here is them trying to find an out, find a sneaky route to get him sentenced before Trump can even respond. And Trump's defense, you got to hand it to them. And they were working hard over this weekend, and they have come back with a banger, and it's a good filing. So we're going to keep our eye on this. Judge Merchan, the clock is ticking. Get your answer on our desk by the close of day. All right. And now, my friends, let's turn our attention to the certification, because here's what's happening. CNN's got the countdown timer. We got 7 minutes, 48 seconds left. They're on a commercial. We've got updates on Joe Biden here over from Fox. Biden's labeling Trump a real threat to democracy. I might have had that actually queued up here. A Biden comment. Here's Biden. Here's Biden. I think I have that comment here. Here's Biden specifically saying this. Joe Biden snaps at a reporter, says that he's been around this world for a long time and you don't know anything about anything. Here's Biden.
He's a threat to democracy.
I think what he did was a genuine threat to democracy. My being the oldest president, I know more world leaders than any one of you ever met in your whole goddamn life.
Yikes! In your whole goddamn life. Will you relax there, Joe? What are you so mad about?
Met in your whole goddamn life.
Dang, man. He's very unhappy about that today. All right. So I don't know. It's like, well, what, do they like you or what's going on? I mean, Joe Biden doesn't really know much of what's going on. Here is a birthday celebration. He brought this young man on to the stage.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. All right. Happy
birthday, dear. Happy birthday.
Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Oh, that poor kid. He's like, oh man, this guy has no idea who I am. The hell's my name? No one has any idea. All right, so there's Joe Biden. And then when he's not out there telling you how strong of a world leader is and how you don't know goddamn anybody in your whole life, here's Joe Biden, who's still trying to sniff the kids. Don't do it, Joe. No! No! No, Joe! No, don't! No! Don't do it! Oh, someone get that kid out of there. Someone get him out of there. Get her out of there! No! All right, we got to stop. Okay, so we're playing again. I thought it was going on. So we have to stop it. All right, enough. Somebody get that kid out of there. Things are getting bad. All right, so here, Joe was out there. He was talking for a little while. He actually had a little bit of a speech yesterday.
Of the most incredibly different people. Strom Thurmond, 100 years old, on his deathbed. I get a phone call from the hospital, from out of Walter Reed. And it's his wife, Nancy, saying, Joe, I'm here with the doctors at the nurses station. Strom asked me to ask you whether or not you'd do his eulogy. And I said, well, Nancy said, no, Joe, it's important to him. Would you do his eulogy? Well, you know.
Okay, so we're at that time. It's like story time with Grandpa. All right, and then here's Chuck Schumer, who got asked about this. You know, Chuck, you guys kind of lied to us for 4 years about Joe Biden's capabilities and his competencies. Are there any things you'd like to correct on that record?
I want to play you a little bit of something you said last year. Take a look.
I talk to President Biden, regularly, sometimes several times in a week, or usually several times in a week. His mental acuity is great. It's fine. It's as good as it's been over the years. All this right-wing propaganda that his mental acuity has declined is wrong.
Leader Schumer, what do you say to Americans who feel as though you and other top Democrats misled them about President Biden's mental acuity?
No. Look, we didn't. And let's look at President Biden.
We are.
He's had an amazing record. The legislation we passed, one of the most significant groups of legislation since since Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, putting in 235 judges, a record, and he's a patriot. He's a great guy. And when he stepped down, he did it on his own because he thought it was better not only for the Democratic Party, for America. We should all salute him. We should all salute him.
Do you feel, as we have this conversation today, that President Biden could serve another 4 years had he stayed in the race and potentially won?
Well, I'm not going to speculate. As I said, I think his record is a stellar one, and he'll go down in history as a really outstanding president.
Yeah, right. Okay, so a lot of cope happening there. Just more talking points from Chuck Schumer. I didn't lie to you. He's amazing. Everybody can see the opposite of that, but they will just go down with their talking points no matter what. All right, so let's take a look now and see what's happening out there. We're just minutes away from the official certification proceeding. We've got a bunch of different things happening on the screens. Let's see what CNN is saying at the moment and boost this audio.
Deliver for the American people if he's always thinking about
1 minute, 48 seconds, according to their countdown.
All right, thank you so much. And we see Vice President Harris there in her ceremonial role as president of the Senate. She will oversee. She's there with the newly reelected Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. There were, of course, many deeply disturbing moments when the Capitol was attacked 4 years ago. This
Jake.
one among the most chilling.
Oh, Jake, loser Jake is going to do a highlight reel. Okay, come on, CNN B-roll guy. Don't you have like a million of these?
We're supposed to show a scene there of Vice President Mike Pence's life, threatened by supporters of his boss,
but where's the clip?
President Trump. But that slot did not come up for some reason. In any case, we all remember it. We're joined by the former chief of staff for Vice President Pence, Mark Short. He also served as the Trump administration's director of legislative affairs. He's now chairman of the board for a group called Advancing American Freedom. Mark, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for being here. So at just about this time on January 6th, Donald Trump was telling
All right, let's go to Fox. Let's see what they got.
First, people have just filed their way in. On the left of your screen, the Vice President, Kamala Harris. Of course, she presides in that role as the President of the Senate. And Mike Johnson, the newly re-elected Speaker of the House. So they are together. Lawmakers are moments away now from certifying the election night win of President-elect Donald Trump. And you see Harris and Johnson there. Harris, of course, will be presiding over her own defeat to Trump. Only the third VP in decades recently to do that. Nixon and Al Gore most recently in '60 and 2000. America Reports now.
All right, so here on our screen, we've also got what you can see is this imagery. They just had a close-up. They were showing us around. I saw Susan Collins was in there. Here we go, some other close-ups. There's Senator Kennedy in the House. See him poking over there. There's Pete Aguilar. There's Jamie Raskin. There's Hakeem Jeffries, Democrats over in this corner. As we can see here, there's your boy. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tim Kaine is there. Looks that might be Jason from Financial. He's piling in. Lots of hugs out there. Okay, we got some reporting here.
The Constitution dictates that the vice president, in her capacity as president of the Senate, quote, open all the certificates and the votes shall then be counted. That's what happens today.
In just a few minutes, senators will head over to the chamber of the House of Representatives to count the electoral votes and certify the election of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance as president and vice president of the United States.
They have carted the electoral votes into the House chamber via mahogany boxes. Then they go through each state alphabetically. Lawmakers could challenge electors, but that requires a petition comprised of 20% of all lawmakers. President Biden emphasized the importance of a peaceful transfer of power.
Than last time. Remember, last time was just 1-1.
Literally put to the test. And thankfully, our democracy held. You know, the core traditions we've long respected in America, certifying an election, is attending an inauguration of an incoming president. And this is all part of the tradition we have to begin to restore.
Security officials deem today a national security event. A massive barricade now encircles the Capitol. However, there are no threats.
The process will return to normal and remain solemn but peaceful. We're here today to continue.
Nobody's dropping pipe bombs off today. Nobody, no FBI agents.
People have already decided, and nothing more.
The vice president cannot intervene in the proceedings thanks to a new law. It's awkward that various vice presidents have presided over their own defeats. That includes Richard Nixon, Hubert Humphrey, and Al Gore. And Vice President Harris joins that list today. Sandra?
Well, quite a sight there that we are watching together on the House floor.
All right, here's some more from the House floor. See, piling on in there. We've got basically, we're past the hour, so I think we should be gaveling in. I think they said at 12:55, they'd be coming back in. And then, so we should be getting underway relatively soon. There's Tim Burchett as well. You see him talking. Hey, that's JD, right? There's JD right there. JD's in the house. See who else is popping in. Different scene. There's Raskin. Aguilar down there. Raskin's right behind my head. All right, so still piling in.
But not really close in the end. And it is interesting that this day, 4 years ago, obviously January 6th and all that happened, was a big part of the political campaign of Vice President Harris and talking about that and threat to democracy. She put out a video last night saying it was important that this go smoothly, the transfer of power. And
yeah, I don't want to hear about her
opposition or raising of any
they tried to throw Trump off the ballot.
This is history. You know, this is a moment, if you think about from 4 years ago, where Donald Trump was on January 6th and January 7th, not only physically but politically. Think about the resurrection from that point, the turnaround politically. We've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, greatest comeback in American history.
Later, the mahogany boxes with the electoral votes have been marched in, and they'll go state by state and show how Donald Trump and J.D. Vance won this election.
Now, we do not know at this point, but it could happen that people object to the certification of the electors. We'll see as the process continues for all 50 states. But back on your point about
I don't think they'll do it.
Where were we not too long ago? And Biden and Harris claiming that Trump was a threat to democracy.
You think
Biden
anybody
was asked about
objects?
that yesterday. Watch this exchange.
You still believe he's a threat to democracy?
I think what he did was a genuine threat to democracy. I'm hopeful that we're beyond that.
So he went through the entire election, and so did Harris, claiming that Trump was a threat to democracy. We can't afford to let this guy ever occupy the Oval Office ever again.
We'll do a
and then
poll
when asked
on
that question, he
YouTube.
goes back to, well, what happened 4 years ago, I believe, was a threat to democracy. But it still doesn't explain why they were saying all that during the election.
Yeah, I think it changed after America voted. I mean, it's pretty straightforward that the country voted for change, that they wanted something different, which is why some of these moves by President Biden, including the banning of oil and gas exploration.
Here's what we got over on
offshore, just in the past day, executive orders.
Checking the watch.
Run counter to what people voted for, at least on the campaign of President-elect Donald Trump.
All right, so we just dropped a poll. Do you think Democrats, any Democrats, like will any Democrat object? One or two or any of them? Yes or no? That's it. And if you're saying yes, who do you think it will be? I have a feeling, I'm trying to think, like they're very much, what's the word? Like herd animals, right? They kind of do what everybody else does. So I think that they might want to not object. So it'd be better if they didn't object, because then they could come out and they'll use this talking point like, we are better than the Republicans. We didn't object. We didn't oppose the peaceful transition of power. So yeah, I think it'd be smarter politically for them to not object, to get their whole party not objecting. We're back.
Order.
Okay, I think.
Mr. Speaker and members of Congress.
We'll stick with Fox.
Pursuant to the Constitution.
We'll go full screen.
To verify the certificates and count the votes of the electors of the several states for President and Vice President of the United States. After ascertainment has been had that the certificates are authentic and correct in form, the tellers will count and make a list of the votes cast by the electors of the several states. The tellers on the part of the two houses will take their places at the clerk's desk.
All right, so people moving around right now. And hands are being shaken.
So this process will be going on for quite a while here as they count all the votes of all of the separate 50 states, beginning with Alabama. Some states, obviously, Brett, are going to take longer than others, given that some states have as few as 4 electors. Others have many, many more than that. And it's interesting to watch this process in light of what happened here 4 years ago. I mean, this looks like every other year except that year. Let's listen in again.
Without objection, the tellers will dispense with reading formal portions of the certificates. After ascertaining that the certificates are regular in form and authentic, the tellers will announce the votes cast by the electors for each state, beginning with Alabama. Senator Fisher.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Alabama seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 9 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 9 votes for vice president.
Way to go, Alabama!
All right, so again, this will continue alphabetically through all of the states, some of which Donald Trump will be declared the winner, others in which Kamala Harris will be declared the winner. But overall, Trump's got the 270 votes necessary, Brett, in order to take this. We don't think that there's going to be any change in that.
No, and this will be, state by state. They'll go through this process, and obviously, electorally, he's going to surpass the needed number, about 3/4 of the way through. Right. This is, it's the final certification.
All right, so we're going back over.
Trump of the state of Florida received 11 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 11 votes for vice president.
And what was that? Arkansas? Shout out to Arkansas. Pretty sure that was Arkansas.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Arkansas seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 6 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 6 votes for vice president.
Arkansas! Yeah!
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of California seems to be regular in form and authentic.
We did Arizona. I missed Arizona.
Therefrom, that Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 54 votes for president. I missed
Arizona.
And Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 54 votes for vice president.
Boo! Get a clue! The hell you doing, California? Wrecking your own state.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Colorado seems to be regular in form and authentic. And it appears therefrom that Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 10 votes for president, and Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 10 votes for vice president.
Sorry, Arizona.
Madam President,
we're
the
terrible at counting our own
votes.
We can't count our votes here.
Connecticut seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 7 votes for president, and Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 7 votes for vice president.
Gross.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Delaware seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 3 votes for president, and Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 3 votes for vice president.
Delaware, gross.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the District of Columbia seems to be irregular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 3 votes for president, and Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 3 votes for vice president.
We missed Arizona. I was going from Fox over here, and I think they were talking
Madam
during
President,
Arizona.
The certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Florida seems to be regular in form and authentic. And it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 30 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 30 votes for vice president.
Yeah, Florida! Let's go, Florida, in the House. It's a good one. Certified, baby.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Georgia seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 16 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 16 votes for vice president.
What's up, Georgia? Fannie Willis having a tough day today.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Hawaii seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 4 votes for president, and Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 4 votes for vice president.
What are you doing over there, Hawaii?
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Idaho seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 4 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 4 votes for vice president.
Let's go, Idaho, in the House.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Illinois seems to be regular in form and authentic.
Yeah, right.
And it appears therefrom that Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 19 votes for president, and Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 19 votes for vice president.
So I swapped over
Madam
from Fox
President,
to here.
the certificate of
Fox
the
talked
electoral
over
vote of the
Arizona
state
and
of
Alaska.
Indiana seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 11 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 11 votes for vice president.
Here's the tally. 81-79.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Iowa seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 6 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 6 votes for vice president.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Kansas seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 6 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 6 votes for vice president.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the Commonwealth of Kentucky seems to be regular in form
What's
and
up,
authentic.
Kentucky?
And appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 8 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 8 votes for vice president.
All right, CNN's tally. Harris 100-96. They got California in there, obviously. That's a big one.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Louisiana seems to be regular in form and authentic, and
Mike
it
Johnson,
appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 8 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 8 votes for vice president.
What's up, Louisiana? Mike Johnson stands tall.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Maine seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 3 votes for president, and Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 1 vote for president, and Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 3 votes for vice president,
Maine
and
splits
J.D.
theirs.
Vance of the state of Ohio received 1 vote for vice president.
All right, numbers are 110 to 100 over there on the cables. We know how the numbers should end up, but they're keeping tabs
Madam
on them.
President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Maryland seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 10 votes for president, and Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 10 votes for vice president.
All right, we'll swap over to Fox here for a little bit, see what their camera angles look like.
For vice president.
They're rotating their cameras quite a bit.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 11 votes for president, and Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 11 votes for vice president.
Look at that chyron down there at the bottom of Fox News. Worst showing for Kamala Harris for a Democrat since 1988.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Michigan seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 15 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 15 votes for vice president. Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Minnesota seems to be regular in form and authentic.
Wait, Michigan went for Trump. I apologize. Right? Michigan went for Trump.
The state of California received 10 votes for president.
I object because
Tim Walz
Dana
of the
Nessel,
state
I
of
just get so mad at her.
Received 10 votes for vice
and Big
president.
Gretch Rona. But Donald Trump won that, 49.7 to 48. Trump won all swing states, so we accept Michigan. I apologize on that one. I got excited because I got so mad at Rona.
The certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Mississippi seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 6 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 6 votes for vice president.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Missouri seems to be regular in form and authentic. And it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 10 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 10 votes for vice president.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Montana seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 4 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 4 votes for vice president.
All right, I was trying to find like a online scoreboard.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Nebraska seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 4 votes for president, and Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 1 vote for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 4 votes for vice president, and Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 1 vote for vice president.
All right, so here's the scoreboard, what it looks like on CNN right now, 150 to 134.
There you go.
270 to win.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Nevada seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 6 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 6 votes for vice president.
We got no objections so far from anybody. No objections.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of New Hampshire seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 4 votes for president, and Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 4 votes for vice president.
Better Kamala
Madam
angles
President,
on this feed.
the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of New Jersey seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 14 votes for president, and Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 14 votes for vice president.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of New Mexico seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 5 votes for president, and Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 5 votes for vice president. Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of New York seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 28 votes for president. Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 28 votes for vice president.
Alvin Bragg and Letitia James? I just wanted to object to something, you know. Fancy.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of North Carolina seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 16 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 16 votes for vice president.
Our poll says 74% say there will be Democrat
the
objections.
certificate of the electoral vote of the state of North Dakota seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 3 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 3 votes for vice president.
That's a big one. Are you ready?
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Ohio seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 17 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 17 votes for vice president.
What's up, JD? You're going to the White House, bro.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Oklahoma seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 7 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 7 votes for vice president.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Oregon seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 8 votes for president, and Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 8 votes for vice president.
Oregon.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 19 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 19 votes for vice president.
We love you, Pennsylvania. We love you, Pennsylvania. Thank you, Pennsylvania. Woo! Big one.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Rhode Island seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 4 votes for president, and Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 4 votes for vice president.
What would they have objected to? Would it have been Pennsylvania?
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of South Carolina seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 9 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 9 votes for vice president.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of South Dakota seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 3 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 3 votes for vice president.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Tennessee seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 11 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 11 votes for vice president.
What's up, Tennessee? You know who's next? Texas.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Texas seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 40 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 40 votes for vice president.
What's up? Thank you, Texas. Okay, 7 states left, my friends.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Utah seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 6 votes for president, and J.D. Vance from the state of Ohio received 6 votes for vice president.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Vermont seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 3 votes for president, and Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 3 votes for vice president.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the Commonwealth of Virginia seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 13 votes for president, and Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 13 votes for vice president.
All right, 4 left. We just got the W's left.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Washington seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 12 votes for president, and Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota received 12 votes for vice president.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of West Virginia seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 4 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 4 votes for vice president.
Almost there, my friends.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the great state of Wisconsin seems to be regular in form and authentic. And it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 10 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 10 votes for vice president.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Wyoming seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 3 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 3 votes for vice president.
And that's it, my friends. We love you, Wyoming. Thanks for throwing Liz Cheney out on her booty by 40 points.
Members of Congress, the certificates having been read, the tellers will ascertain and deliver the result to the President of the Senate.
She's the President of the Senate today, right?
The undersigned, Deb Fisher and Amy Klobuchar, tellers on the part of the Senate, and Brian Steele and Joseph Morelli, tellers on the part of the House of Representatives, report the following as the result of the ascertainment and counting of the electoral vote for President and Vice President of the United States for the term beginning on the 20th day of January, 2025.
The state of the vote for the President of the United States, as delivered to the President of the Senate, is as follows. The whole number of the electors appointed to vote for President of the United States is 538. Within that whole number, the majority is 270. The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes.
Yeah, he did.
Kamala D. Harris.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. Woo, baby. 312. Yeah, he sure did, Kamala. Woo.
Kamala D. Harris of the state of California has received 226 votes.
Oh, blown out of the water. Crushed. Game over. Lost. Epic loser. One of the worst losers of all time in American history.
The whole number of electors appointed to vote for Vice President of the United States is 538. Within that whole number, a majority is 270. The votes for Vice President of the United States are as follows. J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio has received 312 votes.
Yeah, J.D.! Woo! J.D. in the house! Yeah, baby, we go to the White House, baby! We're taking back everything, baby! Woo!
Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota has received 226 votes.
Oh, Tim. He can go make up some more war stories about his combat zones and his IVF.
This announcement of the state of the vote by the President of the Senate shall be deemed a sufficient declaration of the persons elected President and Vice President of the United States, each for a term beginning on the 20th day of January 2025.
You better believe that.
And shall be entered together with the list of the votes on the journals of the House and the Senate. Thank you very much.
Kamala Harris.
All right, well, there it is. It's official.
Announcing-
Donald Trump has 312 electoral votes along with J.D. Vance. Kamala Harris falling short with 226 along with Tim Walz. Brett Baer with us still. It's got to be tough. It's kind of like reading your own political obituary.
Having been concluded pursuant to Senate Concurrent Resolution number 2,
objections.
the 119th Congress, the chair declares this joint session dissolved. Thank you.
All right. Joint session of Congress is now officially over. President Donald Trump certified, along with J.D. Vance, to be the next president. Coming into office January 20th, we got it done. So no objections from the Democrats. They got together. They're like, don't do it. We're going to look like idiots if we do it, because if we do it, then everybody's going to say, whoa, you're saying that you're interfering with the peaceful transition of power. So they didn't do it today, but many of them we know wanted to. They were sitting there squirming in their chairs. There's Ted Cruz. Hey, there's Chuck Grassley's over there. And others in tow. There's Susan Collins back there behind Grassley. So they'll be hanging out amongst themselves. Let's see how the rest of the cables are reporting on this puppy and see what's happening out there. Of course, we got a little bit more news to cover. Well, CNN looks like CNN's having a rough time right now. Oh, they just fixed it. All right. So they just had a screen of death over there. But they fixed it. So Congress is reporting. Let's see what CNN's saying about all this. Are they going to talk some Jan 6 stuff?
And the huge risks and challenges he will face as president. A very, very narrow majority in the House, tiny majority in the House, and a very narrow majority in the Senate, and not 60 votes. You know, you always talk about, do you need 60 votes to get much done? They're going to have 53. That's good, but it's not enough. And so even today, he's trying to figure out, how do you do immigration? How do you do tax cuts? How do you do spending cuts? How do you do some of the other things he wants to do? So today is a day, as Jamie said, normal. Americans, no matter how you voted, we should celebrate that this January 6th looks nothing like the horrendous.
Yeah, maybe the FBI and Nancy Pelosi should have secured the premises. Maybe the National Guard should have been there,
shape his legacy.
As Trump wants, and acting Secretary of Defense Miller and Milley could have secured the place.
On the other side, you've got 3 years of 10% inflation, $5 a gallon gasoline, and people look back fondly at the Trump years and said, "Yep, we want some more of that."
And that's, you know, James Carville's just said it the other day. It's the economy stupid.
Yep.
And he said, I got it wrong, which is interesting.
Brett, we'll see you tonight at 6 o'clock.
You bet.
Appreciate your coverage. We've got the governor of Louisiana standing by with Sandra. Sandra?
Yeah, all right. Thank you, John. Thank you, Brett. Let's bring him in now. Governor Landry, thank you so much, Governor, for staying with us through the breaking news. First, your reaction.
This is interesting because we got some NOLA news, too.
Election.
We got some NOLA news we'll talk about.
I'm excited. January 20th can't come fast enough.
Tell me about it.
In regards to everything that we have endured since New Year's Eve here in Louisiana, we are very patiently but eagerly awaiting the presidency of Donald Trump and his cabinet so we could get to work here in Louisiana.
I want to ask you about what is about to happen there moving forward. You are about to be with the current president, Biden. They're in New Orleans. He announced last week that he would be stopping down there in New Orleans, paying a visit after the terror attack on the street on Bourbon Street last week. What do you plan to talk with the president about today?
Yeah, I have two very specific acts of President Biden, some things that he can do between now and the time that President Trump takes office on January 20th. Is one, we need a presidential declaration of disaster so that we can continue to prepare for the Super Bowl and mitigate the expenses that we endured during the terrorist attack on New Year's Day. It also helps us for mitigating protective measures as we go into the Super Bowl, and then about 30 or 40 days later, we'll have Mardi Gras. So New Orleans has a lot of events, some very important events that are coming up, and we could use a lot of help. In addition to that, we're going to be asking him also in that declaration to be helping the victims as well, so that we can get support and financial aid to those victims who are either healing, or those families who are mourning. And then secondly, we're going to be talking to him about drones. We've been having a lot of drone activity over some very sensitive areas of Louisiana. You know, Louisiana has about 23% of the refining capacity in the country. We're home to 2 nuclear reactors that produce electricity here in this state. And so I'm going to be talking to him about that as well.
You know, Governor, I imagine you'll also be
just
talking
released new
about
videos too.
Perhaps one of his last moves, President Biden, there in office, with the announcement of the banning of offshore drilling on federal lands that will greatly affect a lot of what happens in your state. I can imagine that'll come up. What are your thoughts, and what is the reaction from so many in your state on that?
Yeah, there's a lot of anger in our state as to that. It means a lot in regards to our economy and jobs, and of course, the overall economic impact that that has on the country as a whole. I mean, we have seen 4 years of constant inflation that has basically eroded the middle class, made the poor even poorer. And at a time right now, we're dealing with, extremely low temperatures. I mean, this polar vortex that has affected a great swath of the country. We see energy prices rising, and yet here we have the Democrats on the way out the door, just sticking it to the American people one more time and just saying, don't worry, we're going to just increase your energy prices on the way out of the door. So, I will be expressing to him my disappointment on that, but certainly I believe on the 20th, when President Trump comes in, we'll be working on it, and our Attorney General is busy getting the lawsuit ready.
Yeah, your Attorney General called this a direct threat. She promised that a lawsuit is on the way if this happens. Wow. Is there one then, Governor?
Oh, absolutely. Look, we have a great track record, both when I was Attorney General and the current Attorney General was the Solicitor General, in beating the White House against their energy policies that affected Americans. And so I can tell you that Attorney General Liz Muro is busy at work today and will be ready to file that suit ASAP.
You know, I think I'll finish off where we started, watching what's happening there live on the House floor just minutes after the official certification of the 2024 presidential election. As we work our way now just days from inauguration, you think about a lot of what we just discussed was about what this election was about. You're talking about inflation. You're talking about overregulation, red tape, stifling business and industry. And, of course, what just happened there on Bourbon Street in the French Quarter in New Orleans, horrific attack playing out. Just finally get your thoughts on this moment in history as we do just now have the official certification of the election.
Look, Sandra, I think when you sum up everything you just said, it sums up the frustration of the American people, irrespective of their political ideology. They're tired of paying high energy prices. They're tired of being scared in their own home. They want to be safe. They want to see an America that is great and that has economic prosperity for all, that basically expands the middle class and gives everyone back an opportunity for the American dream. That's why I've always said that I believe that J.D. Vance's partnership with Donald Trump was the fact that he represents the American dream, and Donald Trump can deliver it for us.
And Governor, we will see you again shortly. You'll be there in the streets of New Orleans with President Biden. We look forward to seeing and hearing what comes from that meeting. Thank you so much, Governor, for joining us.
All right, so that was the governor of Louisiana, obviously where the attack in New Orleans happened, and there is more news on New Orleans. And so we'll talk New Orleans stuff. We have another J6 prosecutor who is resigning in disgrace. And then, of course, we're going to hear from you and see what you say about all of this on this historic day as President Trump is now officially certified to be our next 47th president. We're excited about that. But here is some other very interesting news that has dropped. The FBI released new footage of the New Orleans attacker. You see a photograph from this video shows that this person is wearing these glasses that apparently recorded a bunch of the activities on that tragic day. And so they published this on their official YouTube channel at FBI on YouTube. And you can see, we'll watch through some of it together. Here was the official press release that came out from the FBI says, we've released a bunch of information on the Bourbon Street attack, including new videos. They've dropped it all on their digital media center. Here's the press release. They say, anyone with information about this, please call us. Says the New Orleans field office is seeking to identify potential victims. If that may be you, contact them. And they've given us these 4 different drops, most of which we've already covered here, but they also dropped in a multimedia section. So you can see the Bourbon Street attack. They gave us the details here officially. They also dropped this multimedia page. So they give us this photograph of Shamsud Din Jabbar, looks like a driver's license photo. Here's another photo. Surveillance footage from 203 shows Jabbar as he walked along the Dauphine Street near Governor Nichols Street. The footage shows him dressed in a light brown long coat, dark colored button-down shirt, blue jeans, what appears to be a brown dress shoes. Seen there walking down the street. Another photograph there you've seen. This is one of the IEDs, improvised explosive devices, placed on Jabbar near intersections of Bourbon and New Orleans Street. And here is that still photo. Recorded himself looking into a mirror in what looked to be his Meta glasses, those Facebook glasses that record everything you do. And so he recorded a bunch of this stuff, and the FBI put it on the YouTubes. Here's what that looks like. Not any audio that we can hear right now, but it looks like he's on a bike, and he's just riding down the street. And a lot of people standing out there. FBI is going to be blurring out their faces as he's riding down. And so this presumably is him scouting, right, scoping the scene out where he's going to be driving at some point. Here's another scene. He's got his glasses on. These are pretty high quality glasses. I've not paid much attention to the Meta glasses or any of these new devices coming out, but it looks like it's pretty crisp. So he's driving down, probably scoping out what he's going to be doing is the thesis here. FBI's got their stamp up there, and there is no audio on my end. But he just keeps driving around. Praline's company, as you can see, shoe store over there on the right. Driving around. Don't know if this is the intersection specifically where he was. Looks like the corner of Canes or something. And if you're familiar with New Orleans, a lot of this might look familiar to you. But it's a 3-minute video, so he's now following an emergency vehicle, a bunch of cars parallel parked on the side, pedestrians walking up and down the street. He's looking around at what's open, what's not open. And you can see it just kind of continues on. So he's riding around. Then we get inside for a bit. So once this clip ends, then they'll take us back inside his home. So there he is with his glasses on, looking at himself. Looks like he maybe has a little sweat to him. He's like, I got a little workout in. Yep, got a little workout in. He's feeling good about himself. Maybe it was a workout. Maybe he's scoping the place out. Now, what does that shirt say? Looks like maybe a kind of a common shirt that people might be wearing with some words on it. Then there's other footage. So, right, so that's him now walking around. You can see he takes that cooler out, just basically sets it down right there in the middle of the street. That was one of those coolers, IEDs, that didn't go off. And so just kind of stands there on his phone. Don't want to be too obvious, like you just walk off and leave it. So get on your phone and then fake like you have an emergency or something, I would guess. Oh, no, I got to go. Walk away, leave the cooler. People just presume he's going to come back and get it. Little do we know there's an IED device in there, picks it up, walks it back down a little bit, but we don't see him leaving it there. So here's another angle. There's a bunch of people right around that cooler, right? So, I mean, if that thing goes off in that area, who's he waving to? An Uber? A friend? Who is he waving to? A colleague? There's another cooler. Looks like that one's a 5-gallon jug, so different than the Wheeling cooler, but he's walking that around. FBI video continues to play as that still frame just lingers on. Here's some other footage of him walking down the street. FBI's gobbling up tons of footage. Looks like it might be that same jacket. That's at 1:12 New Year's Day, 1:12 in the morning. That's at 2:03 now. So we just fast forwarded a little bit. So he's coming back We just fast forwarded about, looks like 40 minutes or so. Then the FBI video is continuing to play, 2:03:43. And maybe he comes back into frame. You see him walking back in right there. So doing laps up and down this street before he gets in the car. And the attack happens shortly thereafter. So new footage from the FBI. They're still trying to piece together if this guy's, well, they'd say he's a lone actor, right? He's just a lone guy. He recorded all this stuff, just kind of lost it, became radicalized by ISIS. And that's the video that they are releasing to us. So we'll keep our eye on this one, but that's the latest from the feds. All right. And then, my friends, we got one final story on the day, and then we're going to hear from you. One of the worst Trump prosecutors, called Jay Bratt, now resigning in disgrace because he knows Trump is going to come in, and he knows, in my opinion, he was responsible for criminality when he was there as a supposed prosecutor doing justice with the DOJ. This article came over from Spy Talk. They say this is an exclusive, and they're going to tell us that this guy, who was responsible for the Florida classified documents prosecution predominantly, he was in Florida a lot working with Jack Smith, but was one of the worst because he was also threatening people like Stanley Woodward. Stanley Woodward, you remember, was one of a Trump defendant attorney, so didn't work for Trump specifically, has worked for Trump specifically, but was actually representing Walt Nauta. This is Stanley Woodward. And Jay Bratt was threatening him, according to Stanley Woodward and his filings, with not becoming a judge in D.C. because Jay Bratt has some pull on how all that works. And your client's going to cooperate with us, right? I mean, we wouldn't want anything to happen to you becoming a judge there, Stanley, would you? So he's about as corrupt as they come. We followed a lot of his work here, and now he is resigning. So here is what Spy Talk says. A top DOJ national security prosecutor called Jay Bratt, we've called him the Florida Oompa Loompa here from time to time, has become an early casualty of the Trump administration coming in, abruptly resigning from the department last week before incoming nominees can retaliate against him for his key role in Jack Smith's team. Now, I don't know who this guy is or what his position is, but this article sounds like we know which way it's going. But here is what he says. The resignation of Bratt, a career lawyer who served as chief of counterintelligence in national security before he went on to Jack Smith's team, has not publicly been announced. But three people familiar with the move described it to Spy Talk as a significant and even chilling event, previewing an exodus of seasoned government lawyers, or AKA partisan government bureaucratic hacks, and FBI agents who fear the wrath of Pam Bondi, the incoming Department of Justice AG. Trump's pick for AG, Kash Patel, his intended nominee for FBI, and their expected army of MAGA loyalists are all coming in. They said they're forcing him out. There isn't any doubt that, like Christopher Wray, he's leaving to get ahead of the axe, said someone, a Justice Department official who attended the party. They threw a party for him at the DOJ's 7th floor media center on Friday. They threw a prosecutor party. Reached by phone on Sunday, Jay Bratt, 65, who served as the justice lawyer for more than 3 decades, he confirmed, yes, I'm leaving. Bratt, who has achieved senior status within the department, told his friends that he concluded it, quote, wasn't worth it to stay at the department, only to fight what he expected would be a wrongful termination notice. Bratt had a farewell party at the DOJ. It was largely devoid of gallows humor, featuring encomiums to Bratt's lengthy career. Everybody got up and they just, did the thing. Matthew Olson, who's also a hack, the Assistant Attorney General for National Security and longtime colleague, praised Bratt as the consummate go-to guy. He's the prosecutor who takes on the hardest cases and is never afraid and never falters under pressure. This is how they talk to each other when they go to their dumb little prosecutor parties. Perhaps most notable was the presence of Jack Smith, who went to the party. He's like, I like cake too. And several members of his staff, like Julie Edelstein, another young and upcoming prosecutor who served as Bratt's deputy, is also resigning because they're cowards, because they were all committing crimes and they know they're going to get caught, so they're running away. If they were just doing the will of the DOJ and prosecuting for the righteousness of the department, why would they be going anywhere? Because they didn't break the law, obviously, right? Smith spoke briefly Jack Smith got up there, who's not even a legitimate prosecutor, not even a real boy, telling the gathering of current prosecutors how much he appreciated working with guys like Bratt, who didn't shrink from making tough decisions. It was a veiled reference to Bratt's clashes with Trump's lawyers during the investigation, drew a few soft chuckles and murmurs because he went after Trump. There's little secret why Bratt had become a prime target for Trump loyalists. Starting as a junior lawyer, he moved to prosecute Trump. In 2018, he took over during the Trump administration as chief of the counterintelligence section. It was a role that put him in charge of espionage. He eventually found himself raiding Trump. He got a referral from the National Archives, raided Trump's house, got evidence that Mar-a-Lago was moving boxes around. Then they talked to that FBI hack called Stephen D'Antuono, who says, that guy who said, we can't remember or we can't find accurate cell phone data for the J6 pipe bomber because the data was corrupted from, the data companies whose job it is to not corrupt data. The search enraged Trump because it was illegal. Bratt later faced a claim of misconduct by Stanley Woodward, the lawyer for Walt, Trump's valet, they call him, but he was much more than that, is much more than that. They claimed that Bratt brought up an application. Stanley Woodward, a defense attorney, wanted to be a judge. And then Bratt said, you don't want to do anything to mess that up, do you? Saying your client better turn on Trump and I'll make you a judge. That's what he said. Make your client, Walt, flip on his boss and I'll make you a judge, essentially. At no point did Bratt respond with anything that could be considered a threat or a suggestion of a quid pro quo, said Jack Smith's team. Still, in what one justice source described as an abundance of caution, Smith's office later referred the allegation to the Office of Professional Responsibility. And now Bratt's resigning. And so now he's no longer under their jurisdiction because he knows what he did. But Bratt's resignation doesn't end there. Jim Jordan is launching his own investigation. That threat, which continues to hang over him, forced Bratt to hire his own lawyers to fight back against the DOJ. Good. You'll see how expensive it is to fight crimes. On Saturday, it's even more expensive when you didn't do it. Trump's transition team announced that Woodward would join the new White House staff as senior counselor. And so let me share that with you now. So Stanley Woodward, the guy who got basically extorted or attempted extorted by the DOJ, is now going to be going to the White House. So here is the latest. Trump is appointing Stanley Woodward to the White House role. Welcome aboard. So let's just brief this. Stanley Woodward is going to be joining Emil Bove and Todd Blanche and Kash Patel and Pam Bondi. We're taking over, baby. All right, here's Stanley. They say Trump on Saturday named Stanley Woodward, an attorney who defended several of Trump's aides, like Walt, is going to be joining the White House legal team. Amazing. Trump's transition team said in a statement that Woodward would serve as assistant to the president and senior counselor and would work closely with Trump's chief of staff called Susie Wiles. Trump last month also put in another top lawyer and moved someone else over to work with Vivek. Trump obviously has taken office January 20th, and Woodward has represented a ton of people, tons of people. Dan Scavino, Peter Navarro, Walt Nauta. He also represented J6ers, Kelly Meggs, and more. And so an amazing addition. Hopefully Stanley Woodward can go in there and clean house. Kash Patel also going over to the FBI, provided he gets confirmed. And they're very unhappy about it on CNN. Here's how Jake Tapper sounds when he cries over this issue.
I want to play some sound from one of those nominees, Kash Patel, nominated to be director of the FBI. This is what he said about the agency that's now charged with leading this terrorist investigation.
The FBI's footprint has gotten so freaking big.
True.
And the biggest problem the FBI has come out of its intel shops. I'd break that component out of it.
Good.
I'd shut down the FBI Hoover building on day one and reopening the next day as a museum of the deep state. And I take the 7,000 employees that work in that building and send them across America to chase down criminals. Go be cops.
Yeah, go do something useful.
So a lot of the people he's talking about, the 7,000 employees that work in the building, are right now chasing down criminals, chasing down terrorists.
Like J6 grandmas.
Investigating what happened.
Abortion people who protest abortion.
Happened in New Orleans, trying to make
parents who are showing up to school, rights, things. Yeah.
Make sure nothing like that happens again. What's your reaction to that?
Well, they didn't stop the New Orleans guy.
I think Cash is right. I mean, the last 4 years, we've seen the leadership of the FBI be more focused on the political causes of the left, going after parents at school board meetings instead of going after and investigating ISIS members in America. I mean, the Jabbar in New Orleans had ISIS content on his social media account. We should have been more aware of that and planned to stop that attack from happening.
But was he a racist? We don't know.
And going after him. And instead, the FBI has become way too bureaucratic, way too political. And Kash Patel is going to be a big part of cleaning it up. But never forget that Donald Trump is going to be the president. He's going to be in charge. He's going to instruct Kash Patel, and I expect Kash Patel will help clean up the mess.
Absolutely right about that. So that is going to be fun to watch coming in. Here's Garland. Garland came out and was lecturing everybody on the January 6th event, along with CNN. And here they're so upset that Trump is now going to be the president, got certified today after January 6th. They cannot stop talking about it. They've learned nothing.
Certifying the 2024 election results in the major step that paves the way for the president-elect Donald Trump to return to the White House.
He's returning,
Justice
baby.
Department officials are taking stock of the now failed effort to prosecute Donald Trump for obstructing the same official process 4 years ago today. With a final report on the investigation expected to be released soon, critics are starting to point the finger in a lot of directions, including at Attorney General Merrick Garland and decisions he made after the insurrection and about the investigation.
Insurrection. You guys want to keep calling it that because everybody knows it was not that. But it is an interesting thing to hear them continue on with this. I mean, their viewers must still want it. We just had another J6 certification. No problems at all. Maybe they'll take that and they'll say, see, this is how it could have been or something like that. But this was before the certification.
Evan Perez, he's got more on this exclusive report. Tell us what you've learned.
Okay, you know, what critics would call the lost year inside the Justice Department, they say it was something that they had to do. They had to spend a lot of time looking into every single possible corner to see whether there was more evidence to tie Donald Trump to the violence we saw that day. One of the things they did find was there was this tip that developed in about June of 2021 that seemed to indicate that there was some kind of meeting between Trump or someone very close to him and members of the Proud Boys. These are the people who were behind some of the worst violence.
Still talking about it. Okay, so they just cannot get over it. Honestly, I hope they keep talking about it because it is so mind-numbingly old and it's like beating a dead horse. People have moved on, but they cannot let it go. They are out of options, out of ideas. They have no candidate. Every time they try to fight Trump over these last 4 years, right? All of their efforts to throw him off the ballot, to prosecute him, to imprison him, and so on, they've all failed. And so I guess they're going to keep doubling down on that until something new pops up. So I guess we'll be here for it as they continue to smolder in their electoral wreckage. All right, and so my friends, let's see who is here and joining us. It's been a beautiful day and a beautiful stream. Congratulations to everybody out there and happy January 6th, happy anniversary. This time we now have a real president coming into the White House. We're excited about that. If you're just joining us, we had some good stuff that we covered at the start of this show. We talked about Trump's appeal. He's now saying that the sentencing cannot happen on January 10th. So if you missed that, we read through Trump's defense's newest filing, which just got submitted over the weekend, saying that on the January 10th date, there cannot be a sentencing. So we'll see what Merchan says. Trump's defense team has requested an answer from Merchan's bench by the end of the day. So we'll keep our eye on that one. We also talked about New Orleans updates. We had Jay Bratt is getting fired. We talked about world leaders getting upset about this. Zelensky's admitting Trump can help bring a close to the war. The Italian prime minister was hanging out at Mar-a-Lago. It's been wild. And so, my friends, now it's time to hear from you. And before we jump into your comments and your questions on this beautiful stream, I want to remind you that we have an in-person inauguration event. Get your tickets to come join us in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's going to be amazing. If you thought that the January 6th certification was amazing, just wait until you come to our watch party. Scottsdale, January 20th, 9 a.m. Arizona time, local time. We're going to watch the inauguration together. We have an amazing guest who's going to be joining us and many other amazing people. So come join us. Get your tickets. They're $100, covers the food, covers the venue. It's a great venue, covers everything you're going to need, and it's going to be a great time. So come join us. Scottsdale, Arizona, watcherlodge.com. Get your tickets. We'd love to celebrate this historic day with you. All right, and now, my friends. Hey, Jennifer, you just got your ticket on Saturday? Amazing, Jennifer. I'm going to jump in there and see who's joining us. Got your ticket on Saturday? Beautiful, man. Amazing. And if you join us, we also there's a chat in there. There's a place to post some stuff. And so it's going to get busier as that nears. But let's see who's joining us here today, my friends. And happy Monday. I hope your weekend was incredible. And you're feeling rested and restored. We got some great comments, some great donos in the house. Of course, as soon as we're done here, we're going to go over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com and hang out for our members only after party. And we'd love to see you join us on Locals, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Let's see what some of these donos look like that have come in. Man, we got a bunch of donos. Thank you, my friends, for sending these in. Let's see where we started. Here we are. Hey, Glocky's talking about Trudeau. We also talked about Trudeau and how useless he is, and now he's going to be resigning. Bye-bye, Trudeau. Glocky says, well, Canada can no longer has a prime minister and no longer has a government. Well, if they want to be a part of our government, we have an option. Hey, Glocky says, with the collapse of the Canadian government, it's time to invade Canada to secure the maple syrup reserve so the world doesn't descend into chaos. Canadian bacon will be the secondary objective. We might have to do it. We might have to. 1917 Beamer says, they changed the Electoral Count Act in 2020. Could you please look that up and let people know about it? Thank you. They did change it in 2020. The real big change was that it's no longer one objection. So the vice president is now more ceremonious rather than functional. And it now takes 20% of a house to raise both houses to raise an objection versus just one person from both houses. So it's much more difficult to raise an objection, but that obviously did not happen today. Beamer says, should be 2022 in my last message. Thank you, Beamer, for the donos. Glocky sharing this one. You know, after billions of dollars in American tax dollars, bro literally asked who's going to pay for dinner. Yeah, we pay for everything. Next time you come to visit me in Texas, you, me, Joe Rogan, go get some good Texas barbecue together. Zelensky says, who will pay? Lex says, oh, we will. How much do you think it'll cost? 50 to 60 billion? Glocky, the Republicans in the Senate are already walking back some of Trump's plans and agenda. I called it. Insurrection Barbie, an amazing person to follow. Thune says, mass deportations might not be realistic and the president needs a little bit more realistic plan. Not exactly a ringing endorsement from Thune. Glocky sharing this one. Elon isn't playing anymore with the current British government, saying you have finger guns, come and get us. Paula, what's up, Paula Gale? Iwanski Spencer. Welcome aboard, Paula Gale. Good to see you. Thanks for becoming a membo. Gordon McDonald says, wanted to say hi as a new membo. Love your work. Thank you, Gordon McDonald. And new membos, grab the members only stream from Saturday. Of course, we had a great stream on Saturday if you want to check that out. And we're working on figuring out some logic so that we can get members only after parties on YouTube too. I'm working on that right now. Thank you, Gordon McDonald. Brian Bishop, learn the name. It's called Polyev from Brian Bishop. Voice of the People says, do not let resignations be their way out, okay? Global leaders caused this mess. Hold them all accountable. I completely agree with that, Voice of the People. We should continue to investigate them. If they committed crimes, they can be prosecuted accordingly because nobody's above the law. Gordon McDonald, hey, anybody got a reference for a medical malpractice attorney in California? I got a whopper on that one. I don't know off the top of my head. Medical malpractice is a very specific field, and you want to get really good attorneys, and they're very selective on stuff and referrals. So I don't have one off the top of my head, but maybe somebody does. Gordon McDonald's looking for you. Are you a medical malpractice attorney in California? You got a client. Elena, what's up? AKA Neely's in the house. Bringing in new membos. Thank you, Elena. We've got, look who's coming in. Mez is here. Jackie is here. D. Monarch De Leon. Mayor of Baseville is joining us. And C. Warren, gifted membos in the house, courtesy of Elena. Thank you, Elena. Revco says, Trump's lawyers need to include an order to preserve documents in one of these motions. Let's see how fast they panic after getting that letter from Revco. Yeah, and I think that's why Jack is running so quickly. is he wants to shred his files immediately. Hey, Chris Solitary 1. Thank you, Chris, for bringing in 5 membos. Memel, Mike Davis, Jason Green, Spacey 11's here. Pink Husky gifted membos, courtesy of Chris Solitary 1. Thank you, Chris, for the new membo, friends. Waldo says, is Mercan insisting on sentencing Trump a way to cover himself from legal consequences? I don't think so, per se. I think he's trying to achieve an outcome. I don't think he's really worried about legal consequences. He knows he's in New York. He knows the New York bar is not going to do anything. Court of Appeals aren't going to do anything. He's probably following their instructions, right? He's like doing what his higher ups are telling him to do. So I don't think he sees himself in any real legal peril. I think he wants to achieve a political end, and he's working to do it. Cliff Norman says, it's always interesting to see the House and the Senate open with a prayer, but you can't do that on a high school football field. A misunderstanding of the First Amendment is behind this confusion. Good readings there from Cliff Norman. Thank you, Cliff. Lady Ice, what's up? Says, we got 6 feet of snow over here. I live on Hoth, my Tauntaun frozen way. Before I reach my first marker, my husband says we've been smurfed. The fence dog video is 6 feet. Still waiting for plow. He got stuck before he got here yesterday. Totally stranded. Sounds like a lot of snow. Jennifer says, hey, Rob, you'll get to meet Trump one day too, just like Viva. We're working on it. We're working on it. Well, one day I think so too, Jennifer. We'll get there. But amazing job to Viva. I mean, that's like, what a treat. Hey, here's one. We're going to Walmart. You want anything? We might die on the way back. I know it's cold out there. Will Crump says, what can be done to punish all these prosecutors and judges for knowingly acting in bad faith? Doesn't acting in bad faith strip away their immunity? I mean, there's a lot of layers to that. So, like immunity against criminal prosecution, or should they be disbarred? Right? Like 2 separate layers there. So if they're bad prosecutors acting unethically, you might say they should be disbarred. If they're doing something criminally, you might say they should be prosecuted for a crime or sued for a crime. But yeah, I mean, both things should happen. If they committed crimes, they should be prosecuted. And if they acted unethically, they should be disbarred. B.H. Williams, the court already lacks jurisdiction on the basis of using federal law as the basis for the other crimes. Mercan has no jurisdiction at all. Yeah, and that's a very nuanced point there, B.H. Williams. But part of the jury instructions were that they could say that Trump committed an other offense. What was the other offense? Whatever they wanted. Pick a crime, any crime. One of those other offenses could have been a federal crime, even though the feds looked into it. There was no federal crime. So you're saying that they're relying on a shaky foundation that precludes them from bringing the case. Voice of the people. Off topic, but people should look up what quantum entanglement looks like. It's been done and recorded now. It looks like yin yang. Major scientific breakthrough coming soon. Many gravimetric drives exist from Voice of the People. I don't know about the drives, but I do think that quantum entanglement is a real thing, and that's the idea that you can entangle 2 basically, photons or components of an atom, right? So I think it's like a proton or something, and you spin them in the same direction. So for example, you shoot 2 things that are identical out, like let's put this like in a gun format. You shoot 2 things out the ends of guns. One goes 7 miles that way, the other goes 7 miles that way, and they're spinning the same direction, okay? They're both spinning clockwise, let's say. But they're entangled from the beginning. You shoot them out, one goes 7 miles this way, 7 miles this way. Then when you go onto the other end and you invert one side, on one end of the 7, you invert it, you flip it counterclockwise, the other one flips counterclockwise immediately. So they're entangled with each other across time and space. There's no delay. So the information is traveling faster than the speed of light, because as soon as you twist it, it twists. It's not like you have to send a signal to it to twist. They twist immediately. So why is that? Quantum entanglement. Wild. Glocky. The mass and murder of thousands of British girls by foreign invaders is the tipping point. We've dropped bombs on stuff for less. There's genocide and more. And Elon is digging into it. Should America liberate the people of Britain from their tyrannical government? 59% say yes. So I mean, we we're going to have a pretty good system once we liberate Panama, Greenland, Canada, the UK. You're next. Oatmeal Brains staff is at it again. Biden, Rick Donner reporting that Biden is going to be banning 625 million acres of federal waters so that we can't have access to the oil there. Thanks, Joe. Sandy says, wouldn't holding sentencing for 4 years act as extortion against presidential policies? If the judge doesn't like his policies, he'll just give a harsher sentence. Exactly right. Yeah. I think that would be unconstitutional because it would be impeding the function of the presidency. And the Supreme Court has said you can't do that. Glocky's here. Says, this came out today. The cover-up is in full swing. FBI is still hiding details in a newly released Russian document, says Glocky. I'll look at that one, Glocky. Thank you for that one. Looks like an interesting one. Real clear investigations. Rick Donner says, I'm sure Garland and the current DOJ will call this an armed insurrection. From Rick Donner, sharing a nice X link. Hey, it's Potentially Criminal. What's up, Potentially Criminal? It's good to see you. My friends, are you subscribed to Potentially Criminal's channel? He's right next door on all the platforms, especially on YouTube. Trump in, Trudeau out. Today is a good day, indeed, on that one. Good to see you, Potentially Criminal, joining us. Yeah, I think it was a good day. And Zelensky's coming on board. He's like, I think Trump might be able to fix this. We saw Maloney is hanging out at Mar-a-Lago. Trump is grinning ear to ear. I don't know what's going on. But things look happy there and here. Good to see you, Potentially Criminal. Backseat driver, what's up? 9 months. I had my baby. Woo, we sure did. 9 months as a new member. Thank you, Backseat driver. Love being here with all of you. We love you back. Thank you, Backseat, for supporting us for 9 full months. Revco, how to understand politics. Break down the word. Poly is Greek and it means many. Ticks are blood-sucking parasites. So they're everything you need to know. Right there. Many blood-sucking parasites. That's about right. Brian Bishop says, a Biden buffet just before leaving office? Giggity? No giggities. No. Oh, no. Charles Argo says, change the BBC stream to Newsmax. I would. I don't have that option, Charles Argo. They give us the 4x4. They just give it to us. They say, here are your news channels. Pick these 4. So that's what we get. Otherwise, I'd change it. DJ Roach says, they did in 2016 and 2000. Why would they do it now? Why wouldn't they do it now? Object? Well, because the rules changed a little bit. So now you need 20%. So a single person objecting wouldn't be enough. So you just have a single person objecting really without it going anywhere. So you would need more like 20% of Democrats to object. And they're not going to do that. Cyrus Jalali, what's up, Cyrus? Says, after Trump gets sentenced on the 10th to finalize his conviction, will Dems use that to impeach him if they manage to regain control of the House? It's a great question. I mean, I don't know. They certainly could use that option and say, well, so my other thought would be, could they do something to unravel the certification, right? To say, well, we certified it on the 3rd, but could we decertify it now that he's a felon? Or could we impeach him after inauguration, or, open up some other investigations or amend the Constitution, something, because of the fact that he's a felon? Or is it just a label? I think more likely it's probably just a label they want to smash him over the head with politically, convicted felon president over and over, which actually might be kind of a cool thing. It's like, yeah, he was a convicted felon and he was the president anyways. Everybody in America told him to eat it, shove it. We don't care. We're voting him in it anyways. But I would argue that it's still an impediment to the presidency, because then in elections 2026, when we have midterms, Trump will not be able to vote. And he needs to be able to vote as the president to advance his agenda. And if you're a convicted felon, won't have that. Voice of the People says, I have very interesting names for all of the people in Congress. Those are interesting names from Voice of the People. Thank you, Voice. Christopher Levick says, Democrats are going to try and disqualify Trump after sentencing him. They want to say they took the high road today. They will say they had to do it for the greater good of democracy, right, is what they're going to say. Katie Ravert, what's up, Katie? Thank you for becoming a membo and supporting us. We appreciate that, and we'll see you on the membo streams. Revco says, Harris has to be seething right now on the inside. Having to sit and tell the world she lost the race has to be infuriating for her. Cope, Harris. Cope. Yeah, I can't imagine what she's feeling right now, because she thinks or thought that she was like the gift to the world. Turns out that's not true. Hey, Mrs. T. Rush says, why are your moderators censoring me? I said, we Floridians rock, and they censored it? What the heck? I don't think it's our mods there, Mrs. T. Rush. It's probably the YouTubes, and I don't know why YouTube is doing that, but good evidence that our moderators are not censoring you is that one of them, K-Bean, just clipped your message and put it right here in our chat here so that we would absolutely not miss it. So it's definitely not the mods. We've got the best mods in the whole world. So it must be the YouTubes. But Floridians definitely rock, and I don't know why you got that flagged out of there, Mrs. T. Rush, but we appreciate you supporting us, probably just on the YouTube's end. Not us, though. Thank you, Mrs. T. Rush, for donating, and we love our mods. Weekend Gamer, 2 months as a member, says, I subscribe for the legal briefs and the antics you provide. Well, thank you for that, Weekend Gamer. I try to do both of them. Sometimes to some people's dismay. Sometimes the antics are not very, very much appreciated, but we gotta work it in. Otherwise, legal briefs are just a little bit dry. So we do need some antics here, I know. Hey, Jester Bob, how many meds do you think Kamala had to take to get her to conduct her own defeat today? Epic. I don't know. She didn't seem that drunk today, actually. Normally, she seems drunk. She didn't seem all that drunk today. Probably after the event. Jester Bob says, a massive barricade constructed around the Capitol. You mean AKA a wall? Oh, so walls do work? Mic drop moment. Thank you there, Jester Bob. Jason Lane said, it is pretty delightful to know she gets a literal front row seat to her resounding loss. And you have to say the score. You have to repeat the score. Hey, Kamala, what was the score? Say it. Say it. 312 to 220. Or whatever the numbers were. It's brutal, right? Say it louder for the record. 312. Hey, Jason Lane, the cackler is having visions of vodka dancing across her eyes as she dies a little with every new elector announcement coming in. Just one after another. Texas and Arizona and Michigan and Pennsylvania and Georgia. If you watch Harris, you can see her die inside very slowly. She looks more and more disconnected with every reading, looking rough. Hey, Lyndon, 5 months as a membo, 312 to 226. Those are the official numbers. Thank you for the reminder. Lyndon, 5 months as a membo. The look on her face is delicious. From Lyndon. Jesser Bob, the lady in red shirt with the black or navy colored jacket is super excited to announce the Trump in advance of ticket winners. She has a little extra pepper in her voice when she makes those announcements. From Jesser Bob. Art Pollard says, inauguration song, Queens, we are the champions of the world. Hammer and Thumb says, I've been getting lots of try again today. Hammer and Thumb, I'm sorry to hear that. When you're submitting a chat or a dono, I don't know what's going on. So maybe you're getting a problem, Hammer and Thumb, and Mrs. T. Rush also getting a problem. So maybe it's a YouTube thing. Adriano Valentino says, watching the certification, so far so good. Good to see you, Adriano Valentino from Australia. I met some amazing Australian friends at Amfest who I need to reach out to. Hey, Kyle Cowden says, I guess the Dems decided to rip the Band-Aid off and just allow Trump to go through, no objections at all. Thank you, Kyle, for the dono. Hey, what's going on, BH Williams? This is a football game. We don't care if we win by 1 or by 50. We won. They have to stop focusing on the narrow majority. The Democrats advance their agenda with thin majorities also. So we have to go and win. I'm with you on that, BH Williams. I don't want to hear this crap from Republicans like, we had to negotiate on immigration because of Democrats. I don't care about the Democrats. They wrecked immigration unilaterally without Republican help. So Republicans can reverse all of that unilaterally. I don't want to hear it. We have both houses, just get it done. Stephen Mosher says Colorado didn't cast electoral votes to popular vote winner. Yeah, well, remember there was that there's this idea that if there's a majority of the states that transition to the popular vote, then all the states will vote in alignment with the popular vote. It's like electoral suicide of states. It's one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. But Colorado is turning into a state like that. Voice of the People says, someone please explain how an IT pro from the reserve made rare chemical EDs, but explosive experts used gas. Doesn't make any sense. From Voice of the People, who does off-label podcast over on YouTube. Here's one from Kyle Cowden. Says, Jabbar redefined getting blasted on New Year's Eve. Ugh, too soon. Mars. J. Brad is gone. Looks like the swamp is cleaning itself. From Mars, 1970 in the house. Hey, Knox is here. Happy Monday, all. The Zelensky curse gets another craphead leader. An acceptable day. Interesting one. Thank you for that, Knox Bierman. We got this one from Dove7. You are very informative and share in a way that is understandable to all. Well, Dove, what a nice compliment that is. Thanks for saying that. I appreciate that. We try not to be dense and idiotic here. We try to avoid it. Sometimes we can't avoid it, but we try. Hammer and Thumbs says, friend, there's no denying the obvious. From Hammer and Thumb. Don't try to deny it. Don't. Alex, what's up? 2 months as a membo. Support our mans for keeping it real. Thank you, Alex. 0393 in the house. 2 months as a membo. First month's the hardest, gets easier from there. Spuds, 5 months, 5 gifted membos. Thank you, Spuds. We got Chris is here, third proverb in the house. Benny Truth, Don Harshman, and Jason Etheridge, gifted membos. Good to see you, Spuds, and new membo friends. Jason H. What's up, Jason? Thanks for becoming a supporter on the day. We're appreciative of that. ELZ says, woohoo, another win. Let's hope the legal Eagles can squash the maniacal menace before the 10th. Yeah, and Trump's appeal today, if you missed that, if you missed at the start of the show, we went through his appeal or his notice of an appeal, then he filed the appeal elsewhere. But he's notifying the court, you are done. You cannot sentence me on the 10th, and you better respond by today. So we'll see what he says tomorrow. Knox Bierman, maple syrup, hockey sticks, and toques for everyone. Americanada. That's pretty good. It's pretty good, Knox. Americanada. Toques for everyone. I don't know what that is. I don't know if I want one or not, but everything else sounds pretty good. B.H. Williams says, hey, be careful. You know, if we invade Canada, their army is pitiful, so they're going to activate NATO under Article 5, which means we will be called upon to defend them. So we will be attacking and defending. So for the maple syrup, Canadian bacon, cheese, and cheap insulin, I say go. Let's go. Yeah, what's going to happen? That's going to be a weird turn of events. Like, we invoke NATO. We're like, we are NATO. Surprise. That's why we told you to arm yourselves up. How you like us now? Take over all of Europe too while we're at it. Glocky, the ticker at the bottom is pretty cool. You can do stuff like breaking news or even when people subscribe to your channel now. This little ticker here, right now we're just inviting people to the inauguration watch party. Get your tickets, watchyourlodge.com. It's going to be the best inauguration you've ever been to in your whole life. Unless you're going to DC this time. If you have a chance, go to DC. But if you can't go to DC, come to Scottsdale because it's going to be great. Hey, thank you for that one. Max Bang. What's up, Max Bang? Corey C., Butler, PA victim, has been largely forgotten. He would have been really happy today. Thank you, Robert, and your crew. Corey Comparator, right, the fireman who was shot and killed, would have been very happy today. I think you're right about that, Max Bang. We will not forget him, our friends in Butler, Pennsylvania, who were shot and killed by Thomas Crooks, allegedly. Thank you, Max Bang. Rest in peace to Corey C. B.H. Williams says, we liberated British subjects once already. How many times do we have to do it? I think we have to keep doing it. I think we have to keep doing it because liberty is the right cause of humanity. Honey Badger, Membo for 3 months, says, JD smiled at Kamala and mouthed, that's mine. Honey Badger. I don't know if he did it, but that's funny. Sandy, gun possession laws include being in proximity to a gun so as to have used it. Clavicle Girl told us how he can reach from the back, grab the wheel, and fight the U.S. Secret Service. Yeah, I mean, Trump's like that, like Elastic Man, who can send his arm all the way through a limousine. It's pretty incredible. He's really, really an amazing man. Knox is here. I withdrew a guilty plea today. We can, as nothing is final until sentencing. Once Trump is convicted, they can block him from the presidency, as no convicted felon can sit as president. Why am I the only one seeing this? So I think a convicted, where are you seeing that, Knox? Because I think a convicted felon can sit as president. I don't think there's anything that prohibits that from happening. I think that their attempt might be, unless I'm missing something, which I very well could be, but I think that their strategy would be to use like the 14th Amendment to say that the conviction is a result of stealing an election, which was the 2016 election based on Stormy Daniels. And that new conviction makes him an insurrectionist under the 14th Amendment, I think would be the closest argument. But I'm pretty sure a sitting like you can run for the president as a felon. Even that socialist guy did that. And Trump was running at, being prosecuted. So I think the only real limitations, the only exclusions in the Constitution, right, are age, natural birth, and what's the other one? I think there's another one. It's interesting, Knox. Once Trump is sentenced, my bad, right? So once he is sentenced, he will be convicted. So lots there, Knox. I'll have to refresh my recollection on that. But I do think, first of all, congrats on withdrawing a guilty plea. That's not an easy thing to do. So Knox withdrew a guilty plea. It's not easy to do that. But yeah, we'll have to look at that, Knox. Thank you for that one. Knox says, once Trump is sentenced. Spud says, the outer continental shelf lands residency. Hey, what's up? Uncivil Laws in the house, my friends. Uncivil Laws right next door. Right? Uncivil Laws in the house right next door. Good to see you, Uncivil. My friends, you should subscribe to Uncivil Law as well. He's right next door. More excellent legal content and brilliant analysis over there. From Kurt and Sean today. Potentially criminal. And Kurt's here. Uncivil Law in the house. Good to see you guys. Residency, right? Age, residency, and natural birth, I think, are the three. But I think you could be a convicted felon and run for president from jail. Spud says the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act cannot be simply reversed by Trump. However, by annexing Canadian provinces and territories, we can work around these areas outside of the lands listed. Also, Greenland may be more productive than the lands that are now protected by Biden. That sounds like a lot of details there, Spuds. As long as we take over everything, I'm open to it. Gons, what's up, Gons? 13 months as a member. Thank you, Gons. That's a baker's dozen. Says YouTube locked up, had to reboot to get back in. YouTube today. YouTube's being difficult today, my friends. Several reports on that. Thank you, Gons. Thanks for supporting us for 13 months. That's a long time. Liz, you too. Today is all about God's grace. God is good. God is good. From Liz. That is absolutely right, Liz. Thank you for that. And hey, Bodie says, Rob, you're fascinating to talk to. Thank you. You're fascinating to talk to. And by the way, Ted Cruz has a podcast. He does. I'm really hopeful somebody will subscribe to it so he stops, talking about it all the time. He's like a senator. He should be doing senator things, but he has a podcast. It's true. Knox says a convicted felon will not get security clearances and may not be able to travel. Right. So then that would be an impediment on him, which is why you would say at this point, he cannot be sentenced as a felon, right? He won't be able to vote. So, right. How do you compete with those two things? And I think that the argument would be that the supremacy clause would override those penalties, but it does introduce some complexities. This is why you don't prosecute your political opponents and try to do this crap, because then you run into these things. Well, New York says that he's a felon, so he cannot have a gun, he cannot vote. So the president now cannot vote in the midterms, so you've just penalized him there. And now he's got to get Judge Mercan's permission before he travels overseas or whatever. And what Mercan is saying that there will be a complete discharge. So there will be no penalties, no probation, nothing like that. But he'll still be a felon, so... And I think there's a difference, right? I don't know that presidents go through the same security vetting. Like they just get access to it. Like it's not an approval process. You just get it because you're the president. But ideally, we don't prosecute our political opponents in this country. We didn't for 234 years until the Democrats got in charge. Now it's open season against Trump. And they lost. And good riddance to them. So let's see who's joining us on X, my friends. Then we're going to go over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our members only after party. And YouTube, we're going to try to figure out how to get our Membo after parties going. I'm going to work on that. Hey, Jim says Democrats are making this way too easy, okay? After all the shenanigans of 2020, the rhetoric of 24 to just step aside seems strange. either they snuck a bunch of restrictions in these past few bills, or they're planning on something else happening. It says something isn't right here from Jim. Good to see you, Jim. I think what we're witnessing is just a total and complete defeat. They lost so badly. There's not even energy left in their party to fight anymore. They got nothing left to do. Phil says, you're a lawyer. You know that certification in this context doesn't exist. They already met. All 50 states did this a month ago. The president will open this. Stop inventing things that don't exist under the 12th Amendment. So very happy friend over there, Greg. Thank you, Greg, for the comment. Carrie B says, now that's a sign from above if I've ever seen one. A fake reporter got wiped out by snow to disrupt the lie against the J6 protesters. Let's see what this one looks like over here on X.
All right, you ready? Yep, when you're ready. Okay. Since the January 6th attack on the US Capitol, when supporters of Donald Trump stormed this building, trying to prevent the election victory of Joe Biden from being certified. On the anniversary.
All right, so she got blasted with snow. All right, so that's funny. All right, so anyways, thank you for those over on X. The Great Divide says, the free United States of North America has a nice ring to it. Yeah, she did change her accent, right? She turned on producer mode or something. She just turned all of that on, producer mode. Strange. All right, so she got blasted in the face with some snow as she was doing her propaganda. Propaganda. Okay, and so my friends, thank you for sending in all of those very nice, very generous donos from the Gray Divide. The free United States of North America has a nice ring to it. It certainly does. From the Panama Canal to the Arctic. Be a nice continent for us. Okay, so my friends, we are going to wrap it up and leave it there on the day. It was an early show today as we watch history continue to unfold and we continue to be a part of it as the days go by. We're going to leave it there on the day. We're going to go over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our members only after party. We'd love to come see you over there. We also want to thank our mods and our meme smiths who are amazing. Keep this show on track. Our friends K Bean, Donut, Mind Me, Carrie B, mod the fort for us, Playing Hooky, Dog Digger, and Janik, all in the house, modding the fort down for us, keeping things nice and orderly. We also have our Spotlight supporters on YouTube, Mitchell Townsend, MJ Powell, and Anthony Petticini, who send in some very nice donos on the monthly basis on YouTube, supporting us at the highest level. Thank you for doing that. We also want to remind you about our in-person inauguration watch party. We're going to be meeting live in person January 20th, Inauguration Day, when Trump is sworn in and delivers his inaugural speech. We're going to be watching it in person. Scottsdale, Arizona. Get your tickets, watcherlodge.com, link down below. We'd love to see you there. People are signing up. People are bringing plus ones. We're going to have a special guest there. I'm going to be there. My fam's going to be there. It's going to be a ton of fun. We have a great venue, beautiful video wall. We're going to watch the whole thing, and we'd love to meet you and have you come join us. Watcherlodge.com. Links in the description below. We also had Anti-War on Rumble. Anti-War on Rumble said, Dems cannot impeach Trump on felonies. POTUS has to be 35 years of age and born in the USA. Those are the only requirements. Says Logjam, the election was certified, baby. Just got it done from Logjam over there. And thank you, Rumble friends, for sending those in as well. But okay, everybody, my friends, it's been a beautiful Monday. Thanks for joining us a bit early as we follow the news. We are going to come back tomorrow to get into it again. And in order to do it appropriately, we're going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends, and an amazing day. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.